Miles, where are you? What are you doing? Are you across the street or something?
Well, I'm just across the parking lot. I wanted to get out here to see how far the flooding is. I don't know if you... I tell you, I have never been in a hurricane that has had this much steady rain. It has been constant. And there is some significant flooding. This water has come up. It's actually going to start inundating the parking lot here. You know, we came here, Tony, because we're about 40 or 50 feet above sea level. We felt it was safe from a storm surge perspective, but we're still going to get a lot of flooding here because of this tremendous rain. I think Chad said 24 inches. Imagine that, 24 inches just in the first dose, and then over the course of a few days, as this storm apparently is going to stall out, the flooding will extend far beyond the coast, which of course is the coastal storm surge. In the meantime, the wind is really whipping up here. There's a structure over here. I can't get enough light on it for you. It's kind of a corrugated tin structure garage. Completely collapsed just a few moments ago. The Dairy Queen across the way there, also hard for you to see. All the signage is out and the windows have blown out. I can see the drapes are flying in the wind. And I gotta say, I feel like I'm getting shot by a million BBs right now as this sheet of rain comes at me completely horizontal. I can only imagine what it's like 15 miles south where Rob and Anderson are. That building where Rob is, that's a pretty stout building. And we were told that the windows there were good to 150 miles an hour. But obviously that apparently isn't the case. Tony? You
wouldn't dare turn into that wind right now, would you?
No, I'm really, it is, as I stand like this, kind of put my good side to it, I feel like I'm getting, shot.
Right.
With a million, I'm getting a million hypodermics.
Right.
And, to go into it would be unthinkable. Now, right now, it's kind of calm.
Okay.
Miles, is there anywhere near you where you can seek shelter when this picks up?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. We could turn around the camera and show you, but it's kind of hard to, in the darkness. We've got a sheltered portico and a brick building right there. And Danny, our photographer, is there. He's under a portico. See, when you're the photographer, you get to be under shelter.
Yeah, but you can't see what's coming at you when you're the photographer.
No, he's in pretty good. In the darkness here, it's tough. Now, I told you a little while ago, we haven't heard back. I'm seeing some cars coming back now. I don't know if that is the rescue mission. There was a tree down in a house here, a family of 5, and the chief, Norman Reynolds. Look at these cars coming. Danny, can you get that?
Yeah.
Wind, and it is something. I think they're coming back from their effort. Let's see if we can get them to talk to us. I'm going to go over to them. Let's see if they're coming. Is he coming over here? Come on over here. If I get one of them to come over, we're going to have to track them down, I'm afraid. They're on a mission, obviously. But they had a report of a tree down. I don't know if there were any injuries or not, but that's obviously the officers returning from that. We'll try to get you some information on what happened on that. They're just in a building very close to here, Tony.
Okay.
We're getting reports that there's about 55,000 people without power right now in Texas. What are you seeing around you? Anderson has been talking about just how dark it is everywhere you look in Beaumont. What are you seeing there in Lumberton?
There's not a light on at Beaumont except those that are attached to our generator in our truck. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons we decided to stay here was the police had a generator, and they told us that they'd have power throughout, but the generator didn't work.
Well, Miles, we're going to interrupt just quickly. We have got to tell everyone what they're looking at. You're looking at a live shot from Houston now. We obviously have a fire burning. Do we know where this is in Houston?
Southeast Houston, Catherine. Southeast Houston.
This is the worst nightmare when people are not able, firefighters are not able to fully fight anything like this. This is what we saw earlier in Galveston, and now we're seeing it in Houston.
And Miles, where you are right now, did we lose Miles? Is he gone? And Anderson? Okay.
Say it again?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you were still there with us. We'll give you a moment if you want to sort of gather, some information on that family. That sounds like a pretty dramatic rescue effort that has to be undertaken by the authorities there.
Yeah, I'm going to go talk to the chief right now. I'll get back with you.
Okay.
Right,
thanks, Miles.
Yeah, let's go to David Mattingly, who is in Galveston, Texas. David? Can you hear us? Oh, there you are.
Yes, we can hear you. And hearing about that fire in Houston, we had a similar incident like that here in Galveston earlier tonight. You would think with all this water flying around that fire wouldn't be a problem. But when the wind starts to damage these buildings, some electrical fires can start and catch these buildings on fire. Here in Galveston, there was a low-rise commercial building and two historic buildings next to it that were well involved. Firefighters actually had to leave the area that they were hunkering down for this storm. They ran over to the Civic Center to where they had parked their equipment in the parking deck. They did that for the equipment's sake. Then they went over there. By that time, it was so well involved, they could only contain that fire. The wind was actually acting like a blast furnace, feeding those flames and making it very hot, very difficult to contain. They worked very hard to make sure the buildings around that were not burning as well. Now, if you turn this light off that's on me right now, this island is in pitch darkness right now. The electricity went out about the middle of the night last night. And what we experienced here at this location, there is a high-rise Holiday Inn next door, about a half a block away. In the middle of the darkness, you start hearing all these sounds of destruction of this metal and of breaking material and things like that. At this location, we had no idea what was going on. And then we come to find out later that the roof on that high-rise hotel was being peeled back in the wind. Now, this hurricane is not nearly as bad as what people had feared a couple of days ago for this island, but it is still having property damage and causing a great deal of problems for everyone who's living here. The seawall, which is 17 feet high, is containing whatever storm surge there was. We were driving along the seawall earlier tonight, and we were looking and wondering where the waves were. We were fully expecting to see when this storm surge was coming in, we were expecting to see waves crashing against that seawall and spraying up into the air. Well, nothing at all like that was happening. Everything was pretty much flattened out. The water was up, it was against the wall, but nothing really violent right here. We're continuing to watch things as they develop here. Apparently, the storm is losing some of its steam here. You stand out here in the elements and you start to think, well, maybe it's going away. Then all of a sudden, just out of the blue, one good gust of wind will come and almost knock you off your feet at times. So this storm's still packing a little bit of a punch here. There is flooding in areas. That seawall doesn't cover the entire island, but there is some minor flooding reported on all sides of the island right now. We're probably going to have to wait until morning with some light to actually assess the extent of it and find out exactly how bad the damage is on this island right now. But this hurricane certainly being felt here, not being felt as bad as they had feared a couple of days ago. And we're just wondering when the sun comes up how bad the damage is going to be here.
And David, is the sense there that the worst of it, at least right now, is over?
I can only tell you what we're experiencing here because outside of the occasional news organization, you don't find too many people standing outside trying to test the elements right now. But what we're seeing here, it seems in the last hour or so, it seems to have been tailing off a little bit. But like I said, every once in a while, there's still a gust that comes along, and I can actually hear one brewing right now in the trees right now. But every once in a while, one will come along and really jolt you and let you know that the storm is still here.
Well, David, stay with us. We want to keep everybody up to date on the fire that we have been talking about in Houston, a 2-alarm fire at an apartment building in southeast Houston in the Clear Lake area. It looks like they are able to fight that fire right now. And as we said earlier, this is what you don't want to have.
That's right.
In a town with failing electricity, with not a lot of power to fight
service.
Fight that fire.
Let's go back to Anderson Cooper now. And Anderson, we were watching you just a moment ago, and boy, I tell you what, you've got to give us a sense of what this has been like for you. And I know this moment gets a little strange because you're talking about your own experience, but to be buffeted the way you're being hammered by these winds, at some point it has to start to take a bit of starch out of you.
It does, to be honest. You know, you can sort of go through phases. About 2 hours ago, I took a break for about 20 minutes and you know, could have very easily fallen asleep. But really, once you're back out in it, you know, the adrenaline sort of keeps you going, and you sort of want to, you know, once you've committed to it, you want to stay in it and you want to see it through. You want to see the height of the storm, and you want to try to be there to tell people exactly what is going on around them. You know, and when the worst is over. In moments like this, you sort of, you know, cling to things like Chad Meyer says about, you know, it's amazing to me how, you know, we see meteorologists on the air, and you see Chad in times, you know, telling the weather and stuff. But at times like this, I mean, for him to be able to look at his map and tell us exactly what is going to be happening here in the next 20 minutes or the next hour is just a remarkable thing. And it really gives you a sense of just how comforting it is for people to have this information. You know, I'm actually sort of, I think we're all, my crew here, we're all clinging to what Chad told us, which is that, you know, within the next, we think the worst of it is going to be from now to the next half hour, and then maybe we'll be on the downside of it. I think that's what I remember him saying, and frankly, even if that's not what I remember him saying, if that's not what he said, that's what he said.
Well, why don't we find out and go right to Chad? Chad?
Exactly. Anderson here. This is your western eye wall now, right at Port Arthur. Now, I know you were there today. You know how far that is. It is moving north and northwest at about 13 to 14 miles per hour. So the western eye, the eye wall itself will be right on top of Beaumont, right on top of you within 45 minutes or so. The storm is tracking toward the north-northwest at about 13 to 14 miles per hour. The worst side of the storm is over here still in the Lake Charles area, moving out of the Cameron Parish, back into Calcasieu Parish, and then back out here into parts of Texas, from Orange all the way back down to, for that matter, Bridge City, and all the way down into Groves, getting hit very hard now. And that weather that is so hard, literally 100 miles per hour. Maybe you're still not out of that 100 mile per hour gust, Anderson, for later on. Probably another 45 minutes, you might see your first 100 mile per hour gust of the night.
Chad, there's some information on the wire talking about the rainfall. I know we're saying 25 inches expected, but
certainly
in Lake Charles, Louisiana, rain falling at a rate of 3 to 4 inches per hour.
Yes.
Is that what's happening right now, along with those winds that are blowing away parts of buildings? And
yeah, absolutely. It's very hard to get a rain gauge that works when the winds are blowing 100 because the rain's going sideways.
Right.
But actually, it does work. There are electronic rain gauges now that will work at that wind speed. Mm-hmm. And the area there has picked up around 8 inches of rain already. And this storm is set to stall over Texarkana and put down almost 24 inches of rain in parts of Texas before Tuesday and Wednesday come to an end. Here's the rainfall totals here from Lake Charles. Here's the purple. This dark purple right in there now, that is 10 inches just on the south side of Lake Charles, right along the lake. So that is one flooded area. And obviously now you have water coming up from the south with the storm surge, and we could see a lot of water all the way up to I-10.
Where are we with that storm surge right now? Where, you know, the reports of a 20-foot storm.
There's no way to know. Hopefully there's no one there to report it. I mean, that's the only thing I can tell you is that it was right along this area here into Cameron Parish as it pushed right on up into the Lake Charles area. A lot of this is very swampy land. I mean, there's Holly Beach, there's Cameron, there's Calcasieu Pass, but not too many people live down here. This isn't like $1 million oceanfront property down there. The beaches just don't support that kind of property. And as you push it on up, though, obviously a much larger populated, a much more wealthy area up here toward Lake Charles getting heavily damaged at this hour. We know from Rick Sanchez. Yeah.
Well, Chad, we've been curious over the last half hour, 45 minutes as to what the conditions like, what they're really like on the ground there in Lake Charles, and we understand we've got Jason Carroll on the line with us. Jason, are you there?
I am here, and I have to tell you the conditions here have deteriorated significantly over the past few minutes or so. We were initially standing outside and came into an inner corridor here at the hospital where we are. This is Christus St. Patrick Hospital. And debris started coming from a number of different directions. And so we've sought shelter here at a spot where we feel a heck of a lot safer where we are right now. What we've been experiencing out here are winds so intense. It's nothing like I've ever experienced, certainly before. Pounding rain. They are expecting flooding here in this area as well. Most of the power is out and has been out for several hours at this point. What is so strange is when you stand outside through all of that wind and you know what that sounds like, how loud that is, You can hear cracking. You can hear things breaking up in the ditch. You can't see what it is, but you can certainly hear it. And I think that is probably one thing that is most frightening. Just from my vantage point, I can see pieces of debris that have broken off from something and that have flown by here. And so that's why, again, why we are standing in this corridor, if you will, just so we can make sure we can talk to you from an area that's safe. And this hospital at this point is operating on emergency power. The command center downtown, they're operating on emergency power at this point. Most of the people in Lake Charles, heated warning, mandatory evacuations, which have been in place for 48 hours and got out. And that's a good thing because definitely from what we're experiencing now, this is what people were afraid of. We did, in fact, though, run across some people who were not able to get out. They're in their homes. And what police officials are recommending that people do at this point is you can't leave at this point because it's too dangerous to be outside. So you've got to be in your home. And if the situation gets bad, the water starts to rise, go to the highest point in your house, attic possibly, bring something with you that you can poke a hole in the roof to get out. They're also saying what you should have done by this point is to indicate on the outside of your house with a number how many people are inside, so emergency crews do have to get to you. They know how many people are looking for on the inside. But the situation here, very intense. Again, the debris flying in every direction. We've seen transformers blow. We've seen trees toppling over not far from where we are. So at this point, we're just seeking shelter and waiting things out.
Wow. That is quite a story, quite a picture you paint there for us, Jason. In a hallway, in a hospital, in a corridor, because they don't want to get close to any walls, any windows, because debris is literally flying around them everywhere.
I believe we have Sheriff Tony Mancuso on the line with us now. Sheriff, can you hear me? We
Barely.
can't hear you.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you tell us where you're calling from and what the situation is where you are?
Sure. We're in Lake Charles, Louisiana, which is in Calcasieu Parish. Our parish borders the Texas line. So I think the eye of the storm, if we're getting our information correctly, we've obviously lost power and we're on generators and we don't have any more cable TV. We lost that about an hour and a half ago.
Well, what can you tell us about what Lake Charles has experienced over the last few hours?
Heavy rains, strong winds. We're probably having a sustained wind right now. We have actually the sheriff from Cameron Parish and his OEP people hunkered down with us, and they have some satellite link up, and looks like we have some sustained winds of over 100 miles an hour, and that's on the east side of the parish.
Sustained winds?
That's correct.
What about flooding?
Not where we're at. We're pretty high. I am concerned about the western part of our parish, which is on the Sabine River. So that is a concern. We just called the police department in Benton, which is the farthest city, a very little small town to the west of us, and they felt like they were fixing to lose the roof on their police department. So they're going to the jail part right now, and we're going to try to get to them here as soon as we can get a break in the weather.
Yeah, have you been able to get out at all? I would imagine with the phone lines down, you're not even able to get 911 calls. We
actually have not lost phone lines yet. I don't know about our 911 center. We have two 911 centers operating, meaning we have a backup. We have people at both locations. And we have received, I haven't checked in the last hour or so, but we were receiving some 911 calls. But no, there's so much flying debris that, a lot of metal buildings, a lot of tin falling, obviously power lines and trees and limbs and things. So it's
what have been your 911 calls? You said you have received. What are you hearing from people?
People, basically now saying, hey, they want to get out. And, that's why we asked for an evacuation. Unfortunately, about 90 to probably 95% of our parish evacuated. So we basically asked them to took their name and their address and asked them to put if there was a way they could put a number on the outside of their house so we would know how many people were there. it's basically until the winds subside to around 40 miles an hour, it's just not safe.
So, Sheriff, a couple of nuts and bolts here. What percentage of your population do you believe you were able to get out of town?
I would say about 90 to 95%.
90 to 95%. And how many people do you believe are still in that parish?
Well, we have close to 200,000, so I'd say 10,000.
Okay. Where are you now?
I'm at my office, which is on the eastern to middle part of the parish. We're at my office in the jail facility, corrections facility. We had evacuated all of our prisoners. We hold about 1,300 prisoners.
Okay. Now let me just ask you this. I'm not asking you whether you're scared, but I'm asking you if this is scary, what you're going through right now with the flying debris, sustained winds of 100 miles an hour. Is this scary for you?
Well, I think we feel pretty safe. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. We have the chief of police of Lake Charles, which is our biggest city. Like I told you, the sheriff of Cameron Parish, which I'm sure is devastated. A lot worse than we are, and he's keeping his chin up. And he said, "Hey, look, I do have a portion of my office that the roof's leaking. So no, we're calm, and I'm concerned about my community. Obviously, when we open those doors and we go out in a little bit, I suspect we're gonna find extensive damage. So."
Sheriff, I hope you will call us back as soon as you're able to get out there and tell us what the situation is, because there's a lot of people that want to know. On the phone with us now also is Rick Sanchez, who's in Lake Charles. Rick, where are you now?
We're right here hunkered down in downtown Lake Charles. We are probably about less than a half a mile from the lake itself, where the flooding is something that's almost expected here because of what they've had experiences of in the past. Not far from the lake, we've already seen some flooding in some of the low-lying areas, so deep, in fact, that we would not able to cross it with our vehicle. Here in downtown, we're now seeing a consistent, sustained wind that's going from east to west. And we're not talking anything like the winds that we were describing earlier in the night, and perhaps that others were describing earlier in the night, where you saw hurricane wind gusts. Now we're seeing hurricane winds, sustained hurricane winds. Don't know the measurements, wouldn't venture to say, but I imagine they're quite strong. And they're consistently in one direction now, as opposed to what we had seen earlier, where they would start to shift and go in different directions. We're seeing considerable structural damage. We're seeing large trees of the oak variety that would probably be as high as a 3 or 4 story building falling down on roadways and on houses. Many of the roadways are being blocked, and it's probably going to take some very large equipment and vehicles to be able to move them by the light of day at some point, which means many of the roads are impassable at this point. I was just listening to your interview moments ago with that official who was saying that the people who call now and say they want to get out, well, even if they want to get out, there's no way to get to them, because in many instances, the roadways, at least from what I have seen here, are closed. One of those roadways, we were traveling on Broad Street. We were going east on Broad, and suddenly a large tree fell in front of us just as we were coming to it. And had we come by a little later, that tree would have fallen on top of our car. So it convinced us that the best thing for us to do is put Hurricane 1 in a shelter, and we're just outside now. The vehicle is, I'm speaking to you from inside the vehicle. The vehicle is outside, and as the wind comes through, it literally is shaking the vehicle. And this is a large SUV. We're also seeing one of the tallest buildings here in town in Lake Charles that is literally being taken apart by the wind. Glass panes are flying through the air. Parts of the roof are coming apart. The rain and the winds have gotten inside the building and are swirling. inside the building itself. We can see debris inside the building actually flying around. In fact, we have some pictures that we're hoping to get to you guys within the hour where you'll be able to see some of that yourself. But I guess the upshot here in Lake Charles is we are experiencing what I believe are sustained hurricane-force winds, and those sustained hurricane-force winds are causing considerable damage to this town just in the small measure that we have been able to see. I imagine over the next couple of hours, it's only going to get much worse.
We'll be back with you in just a little bit and get more from you, Rick. It does not sound good in Lake Charles. And Galveston, our David Mattingly has been all night long. David, you said you were expecting the surge on this storm, the waters to come a bit higher there. Do you feel Galveston has seen the worst of it?
Well, from our standpoint, at least in the last hour or so, the storm seems to be diminishing somewhat. It was about 12 hours ago, actually, we first started seeing some of our first raindrops as the bands of rain were coming in. They were very, very light at the time, very, very small drops. They'd blow in, and they'd only be here for a few minutes, and then they were gone. Now you can see what we have right now. The rain is constant. It is pouring all of the time now. There are no bands associated with this rain. It is one constant rainfall with still very high winds. Before the storm came in, I was talking to some city officials, and they said in storms past, back over in the middle of the island where you have the downtown area, at times when they've had storm surges, the storm surge will push drainage water back up through the drainage system and out of the drains in the street, and they will end up having street flooding more in the middle of the island. We don't know if that's going on right now, but they said that would be a possibility with this storm. So if that's going on, and we continue to have this much rain falling on the surface already, that rain may have a hard time finding a place to go until the storm surge is completely out of here. But again, I'm completely speculating at the moment because these are problems they've had in the past. We have not been able to get over there to actually see what was going on. As we were telling you earlier, the fire turned out to be the biggest and most immediate problem they had. A couple of buildings downtown, not too far from here, caught on fire. Firemen had to come out of the shelter area where they were all gathering for this storm. They had to run over to the convention center where they had stashed their equipment. And in the middle of all this wind and rain, they drove over there. They found the 3 buildings well involved. And as it turns out, with this wind, the way it's blowing, it acts sort of as a blast furnace. It was really feeding that fire, blowing flames and embers over onto the neighboring buildings, so the firemen had to work very hard to keep neighboring buildings from catching on fire as well. But they were able to contain the fire to those 3 buildings that were burning. And at this point, everyone waiting to see if this storm might be through with them and to see what kind of damage there might be when we first start to see that first light of dawn here.
David Mattingly. David, thank you. On the phone with us right now is Mickey Bertrand, and Mickey is the fire chief of Beaumont, Texas. Wow. Mickey, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Give us a sense of what you're experiencing now. I think you've been following some of the coverage, and you know that the winds are only going to pick up over the next 40 minutes or so.
That really concerns me. I tell you, here at our fire headquarters, we've had one window blown out so far, and we've been able to patch that up. We've got our operations center, our main command post about a half a block from us in the utilities building, and they've lost all their electricity. So looks like we're about the only ones that are still operating. Our generator's still on. We're still taking calls. We've had 3 house fires here in Beaumont. One of them a few hours ago that actually caught the house next to it on fire as well. So there were 2 that we couldn't do anything about. And, you know, our firefighters, just like police and EMS, you know, we're just holding back everything we can to not go out there, and we can't until all this blows through. But we're real concerned.
Mickey, what is fueling those fires? Is this a case of gas lines snapping?
I'm sure that's a part of it, and you know, who knows without investigating it. But that's more than likely what it is. In
electricity lines, power lines down.
Well, I wouldn't think so much electricity. I would think probably more gas, sure. And and once that gets going there, we just can't stop it at this point.
I can really hear the concern in your voice. winds, you've got rain, you've got some power outages. What of all of those concerns is at the top of your list?
All our people, we know that we've got, I think everybody in this whole county and, all around here has done a great job on evacuating, warning our citizens, evacuating them, getting them out of here. There's always a few, though, that's held back.
Right.
And we know that there's some out there, and we just don't know what the status is. From everything I've heard, all of our workers, our city workers, emergency personnel, everybody's okay. We're all hunkered down in different areas, experiencing different problems. Police departments in a couple of different buildings here in Beaumont. I know parts of the buildings are being, some debris flying off of some of the buildings, so we're a little concerned about that. But everybody's okay that we know of in our group. We're just concerned about our citizens, and we can't see anything. We can't get out there. We've lost most communications with everybody else, so we're just standing by waiting for this to blow through.
Mickey, how long have you lived in Beaumont?
I've been here about 31 years.
31 years. So you know a lot of the people in this community.
Oh, I know so many. Just like anywhere else, there's a lot of great people. And we're going to take care of them, too.
Okay.
All right, well,
Mickey, thank you.
You can hear the frustration in the chief's voice of not being able to get out there and help people when they need help. We told you earlier about a rescue in Lumberton. Miles O'Brien bringing that story to us now. He has all the details on that. Miles, can you hear me?
Catherine, yes, I'm with a good portion of the Lumberton Police Department and some of the city leaders here. As we told you about an hour ago, there was a tree down on a house, family of 5 inside. They got a call here, and they went out in the midst of this, into the teeth of this gale, to literally cut them out, and it was quite a scene. I'm going to begin with the police chief, Norman Reynolds. First of all, you got the call from them, big tree down in the house. What did you do at that point?
Well, we got our maintenance crew and 2 patrolmen, and the mayor and I went down the road. It's north of town, about 3 miles down that road, to try to get the family of 6 out of the house. Had 5 trees that had to be cut up. It had fallen over the road as we went in.
So just 5 trees just to get there?
Yes.
And once you got there and saw the house, was it in pretty bad shape?
One end of it was crushed by a large tree.
So the family, I guess, was pretty lucky to dodge that one.
Very lucky and very shook up.
Mayor Don Surratt, when you drove through your town, try to describe what it was like tonight.
Well, it's just an eerie feeling. Everybody, it's just all black, and wind is blowing, and things are flying around all in the area.
It must have been hard just to even see the road.
It was hard to see the road. It looked like it was the trees and everything, and the little limbs that were just growing out of the road. It was.
And I say, at one point, you even saw a kind of a scared deer.
Yes, sir. We saw a scared little doe deer running alongside the road.
Well, what an odd sight that must have been. In the midst of all this, were you worried about your personal safety at all?
Oh yeah, you have to be concerned about your own self also. I mean, if you get hurt out there, you can't help anybody else in the process. And you're out there cutting them trees out of the middle of the road, and the other trees are leaning over. It's pretty eerie.
Chief, you told me that there was a tree that actually fell down right in front of you.
Yes, as we approached it, it fell out in front of us.
And at this point, what goes through your mind?
I'm glad I hadn't gotten quite that far.
Tell me, when you finally got to the family, what did they tell you about their ordeal?
They just didn't think it was going to get this bad. Realized they should have left a few earlier, and we're very, very grateful.
Now, you brought the family. You have an emergency shelter and a nursing home, which is just a couple of buildings down from here. I know they're safe and sound there. Maybe they'll talk to us in a little while. I imagine they're fairly shaken up by this ordeal.
Yes, they are. It was 2 grandparents, a mother, and 3 children.
And, we don't want to, at this point, there's not much people can do, but this brings up the point of why it is dangerous to try to ride these things out.
Very, very true.
Now, you told me before that you had about a 90% compliance rate on evacuations. That still means you're getting some calls. There's 10% of your population is out there. What kinds of calls are you getting?
We're mostly getting calls of trees down. We've had to go out earlier and cut trees off the main highway. Alarm calls. We've had to go and bring 2 or 3 more people into the shelter. most of our calls are just calls that don't involve dangers to persons, just property.
So you got 10 people in that shelter now?
No, sir. I think we got 8.
8 people. 8 people. Mayor, we're about 40, 50 feet above sea level here. There wasn't concern about storm surge, but with this rain coming in, a lot of flooding that I'm seeing right here. Did you see a lot of evidence of that as you drove around?
No, I didn't see a lot of evidence of flooding, but we have some low areas in the city, so we are expecting some.
Is this area pretty high where we stand right now?
It is pretty high, it sure is.
Did you get a chance? I know that some of the emergency and police personnel from the communities of Port Arthur, further south, down by the coast, are staged here. Did you get a chance to see them and see how they're doing over there at the high school?
I haven't seen them since about 7 this afternoon.
What, in general, can you remember a storm like this one that has barreled through this area? I mean, Carla in 61, maybe?
There at that time, but yes, I remember it. It was a little devastation everywhere with it.
Are you, at this point, based on the damage you've seen, is this city going to take a big hit?
Oh yes, I think we will take a big hit, but we won't know till we can see. We get some daylight so we can move around and the weather improves where we can get out.
And Chief, at this point, what kinds of calls will you respond to? Because you got to worry about the safety of your officers.
Until the wind subsides, we'll only respond to calls involving dangers to persons. After that, we'll get out and see what we have in the morning as far as property damage.
Now, you just got a call from the sheriff's office saying, get ready, right?
And in the next 10 minutes, the winds at 110 miles an hour should be here.
I'm amazed that the cell phones are still working in spite of everything else. No power, no nothing. You got to be concerned about your personal property, too. Officer Roach, your family is safe, I know, but are you concerned?
Yes, sir. My family's safe, and you know, a majority of us police officers here in Lumberton live in Lumberton. So yes, it's hard not to sit here and want to go over to your house and check on your own stuff. So yeah, it's hard.
All right, guys.
David, how about introducing some of the other guys here? This is Officer Chad Wilson. This is Brian Irwin. He is the building maintenance, and we got Ernie Mason.
All right, the entire team in Lumberton. Already one rescue on. Let's hope you don't have to get out there again tonight, because it's not getting any better here in Lumberton. All right, that's the story. One family saved, tree down in their house. I suspect they're quite pleased to be in that nursing home a few doors down. We'll try to find them and get them on in just a little bit.
Well, that'd be great. That'd be great, Miles. Thank you. And I guess I want Anderson to he's made his way to a bit of safety, we hope. And Anderson, I understand you're on the line with us in what is, I guess, the teeth of this storm right now.
Yeah, it is an extraordinary sight. We've actually moved indoors. A city manager saw us on the air and opened up a building for us that we happen to be right underneath. But the site that I am seeing right now, I wish we could be broadcasting right now. It is a site that I have rarely ever seen before. At the height of hurricanes, I've described it before in hurricanes as a wall of white. There is literally, it looks like a solid white, just a solid wall of white that is just sweeping across the entire region by the Neches River here in Beaumont. There are just a few trees visible. There's one light, which is actually a car light from one of our vehicles, and it is casting an eerie glow to this wall of white wind and water, which is just a solid mass sweeping across the street. A lot of the trees are still standing, which is surprising, and the leaves are staying on the trees. But it is eerie, it is beautiful, and it is horrible at the same time, because you know the power behind this storm. And we don't have any reports of damage. We don't have any reports of any possible injuries. But when you see the power of the storm, when you feel the power of the storm, I fear for what the day will bring. It is an extraordinary sight. It has knocked our final satellite. We had 2 satellites. The truck went down a while ago. It finally knocked down. We just could not transmit through this wall of water and wind. It was just impossible to transmit the pictures anymore. We would still be standing out there. It is a terrible sight. The power of this storm it must be in its full force. It is certainly the strongest it has been in this area in Beaumont, Texas, and it is likely near its peak. At least I hope that is the case, because I cannot imagine it being any stronger than this.
Is Chad standing by? Can you tell us what the situation is?
Well, until we get Chad, Anderson, just a quick question. Even if you were able, the technology would allow you to broadcast from outside, would you be able to stand? Based on what you're describing, it's hard to imagine that you would be able to stand. One of their crew just ran to a vehicle to try to get something out of the vehicle. So, yes, you can stand in it, but it is, it is extremely dangerous at this point. You really, if our car light was off, you would not be able to see anything in front of you, so you would have no sense of what was coming at you, and there's no doubt, debris flying around. Even the leaves and small tree branches, which have been flying around, can be very painful when they hit you and obviously cause damage. So I'm anticipating that this is certainly the height of the storm. How long it will last, I don't know. I've certainly seen this before in just about all the hurricanes I've covered. I don't know that I've ever seen it quite like this. I was in Katrina. I was in Baton Rouge and was missing the brunt of the storm. And while conditions there were certainly bad, it was not as bad as as we later learned it was in Gulfport and Waveland and Bay St. Louis and Mississippi and areas like that.
Well, Anderson, we have Chad now, who is the man who knows exactly what the winds are there where Anderson is. Chad?
92 miles an hour, Anderson. That was the peak gust so far, and the storm itself obviously has wrapped around to you. It was in Port Arthur about 20 minutes ago. It has moved up to Beaumont now, and the wind really coming out now of the northeast. We can zoom in. There's your river you've been talking about all day. There's the heaviest band of rain. Back up to the north and northeast of there, Lake Charles almost out of the worst of it, as the wind is still there, but the rain is not mixing down and making it worse. We always know that whenever there's a band of rain with the wind, you get that squall to come through. That's when the heaviest rain comes through and the heaviest wind comes through as well. There's Houston, seeing some rain showers to you as well. Here are the tornado warnings now in effect because of the wind itself. Beauregard, Calcasieu, and Cameron parishes in Louisiana, Newton, Jasper, Tyler, Hardin, Jefferson, and Orange counties in Texas. And here's the latest and greatest 4 o'clock update. 5 o'clock update, 4 o'clock Central. Rita is moving to the northwest at 12. A gradual turn to the north and decrease in speed is expected. The latest automated station at Sea Rim Park reported a pressure of 28.09 inches with a wind gust to around 116 miles per hour. Wow.
Wow. All right. Gentlemen, thank you.
Okay.
Chad, thank you.
You're welcome.
To Randy Kay now, who is in Baytown, Texas. And Randy, for the viewers just joining us, sort of orient the viewers to exactly where you are in relation to, say, Beaumont.
Tony, we are about, 45, 50 miles maybe or so west of Beaumont. So we're actually supposedly on the weaker side of the storm. And
couldn't tell it, okay?
Well, I can understand why they tell you that you should still evacuate, even if you're on the weaker side of the storm, or at least be careful and shelter inside, shelter at home, because even the weaker side of the storm feels pretty awful. The rain is still coming down, not nearly as much rain as we've been seeing in the last 5 or 6 hours that we've been out here, but it still feels, it stings your skin and even through your clothing when it hits you. The winds have certainly picked up. The city manager here in Baytown told me they were expecting 85-mile-an-hour winds here, and we just talked to our truck engineers running our satellite truck, and he said the winds have gotten so high that he may have to put our satellite dish down after this live shot. But just to give you an idea of how much damage just right here the wind has done, there's 3 flagpoles up there, and they used to have 3 flags on them. Now the American flag and the flag for our hotel, the Comfort Inn, are both gone. All that's remaining now is the Texas flag. And if you look at how that Texas flag is blowing, it's all over the place. The wind is just all over the place. It's not in one direction, it's not in the other direction. It's just up and down and all around us. This hotel has actually only been here since January, so there is some concern about this. But even more so in this area, Baytown sits right on the Houston Ship Channel, and that is a 50-mile stretch of waterway between the Port of Houston and the Gulf of Mexico. And what's critical about that is it houses about 200 refineries and oil plants. That's what lines the banks of that channel. and those refineries could take a pretty bad hit from Hurricane Rita, especially with these winds. So they shut those down. All of the refineries and oil plants closed down. They're hoping to get an assessment as soon as we see some daylight and the storm passes through. But if they do have any severe damage, they could be closed possibly for a week, possibly for a month. It all depends. It only takes 24 hours to shut it down, but it takes another week actually to get it back going. Tony, Catherine?
All right, Randy, thank you.
Randy, thank you.
Over to Beaumont now. Video phone, we have Gary Tuckman. Gary, you're an old pro at covering these hurricanes. What is this one bringing for you tonight?
Well, thank you, Catherine. And I can tell you right now that we're in the middle of the worst of it here in Beaumont, Texas. There is lots of damage here in the downtown where we're standing right now. We're in the entertainment district of Beaumont, where people would be stumbling out of bars at this hour on a typical Friday night. Right now it has been abandoned, isolated the entire evening. It is obviously the scariest part of a hurricane when you get the heaviest winds and the heaviest rains, but when it's combined with the utter darkness, all you hear are the sounds and you don't see the sights. Things all around us have been breaking all evening. And we know firsthand of some of the damage here downtown because we have sought refuge in a restaurant. A restaurant owner has let us in his restaurant to stay there. The restaurant is now undergoing some minor flooding. None of the windows are broken in the restaurant, but the ceiling is leaking and part of the roof is gone. The buildings next to us have lost many of the windows. Canopies from banks, canopies from nearby gas station have gone down. Transformers have blown. The power has now been out for 2.5 hours. It's anybody's guess what Beaumont, Texas will look like when the sun comes up in a couple of hours, but we are quite sure there's significant damage based on what we've seen in this one block. We're using this video phone so we're able to get around Beaumont, but right now, over the last hour and a half, it's been so bad, and we've had these hurricane force winds that we've had to seek refuge in this restaurant. We haven't gotten around the city to see, but the fact is, even if we did get around the city, it would be impossible to see because it's so dark. For people interested in numerology, here's something very interesting. Two major hurricanes in this area in the last half century. Hurricane Carla in 1961. Then you had, in 1983, Hurricane Alicia, 23 years later, and then 22 years later, and now 22 years since 1983, you have this hurricane. Every 22 years, you have a major hurricane. But it sounds like right now we have military jets flying over us. That obviously the sound of the hurricane, that is not the sound of airplanes. They do not fly in hurricanes, but that's the sound we're used to hearing in these amazing storms that hit every once in a while. A lot this year, a lot last year. Back to you, Kevin.
Gary, you were talking about seeking refuge there in a restaurant. Can you tell me who was there at the restaurant? Were these people who decided to ride the storm out?
This restaurant is called the Gusher Room. Gusher for oil. This is an oil town. And what the owner of this restaurant decided he wanted to do was stay open in case anyone, particularly police officers, fire officials, needed his help, needed food, needed refuge. We're the ones who ended up seeking refuge in the restaurant, and it happened to be a great place for us, but we feel very badly for it now because of the minor flooding, because part of the roof is off, and we're all staying away from the water, and we're relatively safe and grateful we have this roof and walls surrounding us.
All right, Gary, stay safe. We'll check back with you in just a little bit.
Back to Lumberton now and Miles O'Brien. And Miles, a few moments ago, Anderson Cooper was talking about describing the scene of this wall of wind and rain, water, and I guess it's a bit of a preview of what's heading your way. And as we take a look at you now, I guess maybe it's actually closing in on you.
Yeah, we're 15 miles north, so that is precisely the preview and the reality right now as this wall of water. It is, Tony, I just can't get over the incessant rainfall with this storm. Every other hurricane I've covered, the rain comes in waves. In this case, holy cow, that is some wind. In this case, it's not so much wind as it is just I feel like I'm getting fire hosed out here. And it hasn't stopped. And the culvert behind me just keeps filling up. There's water all over the place. We were just talking to the mayor. He said there's some low-lying areas that they're concerned about here. We're about 40, 50 feet above sea level, so we're not concerned about storm surge here. Storm surge, as we've been reporting, probably about 20, 25 feet maybe. Obviously, low-lying areas down toward Port Arthur, Lake Charles, that's a different story there. But this is tremendous. And just talking to the mayor and the police chief as they went and got those people, the family of 6, out of that house, just driving through the city, really unable to know where the road ends and the river begins, and having to cut their way through 5, 6 pine trees and hardwoods just to get to the house where the tree had gone in the roof. It is a surreal scene. There's a structure over here. I still can't get enough light on it for you. Completely been wiped out. Just a garage-type structure with corrugated roof kind of thing. And the buildings behind me there, signs missing, that kind of thing. So we still really haven't had the brunt of it, and this town is taking a beating. And we are, as I say, 15 miles north of Beaumont, and it is a good 45, 50 miles down to Port Arthur, where the coast is. So we're still, and even as I say that, I feel like it's about to arrive here. We're still awaiting the full force of the hurricane. But I think we're getting little tastes of it right now, Tony.
Miles, you know, you brought us that great rescue story. Can you imagine those same officers going out and doing the same type of rescue now as conditions worsen where you are?
You know, I asked them if they would go out again, and they said if lives were in danger, they would. And, you know, I've got to say, I mean, when they talk about mandatory evacuations, the point is you need to leave because you're not going to get any help when you call 911. The truth of the matter is these people are so dedicated that they are responding and putting themselves at great risk. The police chief said he was driving his car to get that family, and right in front of him a tree fell. As he said, I'm just kind of glad I wasn't there a few seconds early, with a little bit of a smile and a wink and kind of a Texas kind of way. But this is serious business out here. And anybody who is at home right now riding this out, while they probably shouldn't expect to get help, they probably will get help, because people like the chief here, Norman Reynolds, and some of his officers are willing to truly risk their lives to help them out. It really is something. It
is something. Long list of heroes we've seen over the last few weeks, and we can add those officers to the list as well. All right, Miles, we'll be back with you in just a moment.
And, Catherine, we're going to check in now with our CNN affiliate, KHOU in Houston, and follow a bit of their coverage of Rita making landfall.
That is one of the big concerns. I know that you have talked about the fire that happened here earlier, and they believe that it's a possibility that that was caused by some downed power lines. That's probably one of the biggest dangers right now. As we've tried to take a look around and see what's happening, there are downed power lines now. While the power is out, that's not a problem, but even they can catch you. So you have to be very careful. We think there's going to be lots of debris. We really haven't been able to make it very far at this point. I was trying to look over at the seawall. In all the wind and darkness, it's very hard to see. But at least from right here, I don't see any great amount of debris rolling or blowing down Seawall Boulevard. Now, inside the San Luis itself, probably about 11:30 tonight, they came and pounded on our doors and said, get down to the second level, get down to the conference level. And the reason they did that was because a couple of windows had blown out in the condo building next door, just a matter of the pressure blowing out the windows. And so they became very afraid that they were going to blow out more windows. And in this hotel tonight, most of the Galveston Police Department, firefighters, including some who have come from Houston as part of mutual aid, and lots of media people. And in the last few minutes, we've seen a couple of other people here that we think just didn't leave the island and came here because it was open and they knew that it was a place that they could retreat to. So as to whether this is the worst of it, I guess the only thing I can say to you, Deborah and Ron, is, gosh, I hope so.
Yeah, exactly. Because at first when we looked at you, it looked like it was a little bit less than what Reggie was going through, but then we saw that wind keep kicking up there, so it really depends on where you're standing.
Well, I'm trying to stand a little bit sheltered, but also the wind just whips around. It'll die for a minute, and you'll think, well, it's getting better, and then this huge gust will come, and you can see what it's doing to the bushes and to the palm trees here. And if we got out into the open, I think, those gusts would be even more powerful. And then it will dive for just a minute, and you'll think, oh, well, it's getting better. But the rain really, it's one of those gusts right now. But the rain really has slacked off a lot, so that's hopeful.
Yeah, I was going to mention that because we talked to Reggie probably about 20 minutes ago, and he was very wet, and you're real dry.
Oh, it has been pounding this evening, and then it stopped, so...
Maybe it's getting better. We hope so.
We hope so.
All right. Thank you, Nancy.
Hang in there, Nancy Holland.
All right. Well, we're keeping you up to date.
Chad Meyer standing by in the Weather Center. It sounds like Galveston is feeling like they may have dodged a bullet on this, but is it too early to say that?
Well, it really is, because part of Galveston, especially what we call Bayside, could have been Bayside flooding in Galveston. The wind was actually coming in from the opposite side that everybody expected. They built a 17-foot storm surge wall for the ocean side, or the Gulf side, and that's not the way the winds were coming. They were coming in from the other direction, and there's no wall on the other side. We'll take you to the radar here, take you to the eye of the storm. I'm going to move you ahead here. Beaumont seeing the rain showers, very heavy rain at times. This area here across the river, and the winds now picking up, obviously knocking Anderson Cooper's satellite truck completely off the air. Heard from him on the phone, but that's about it. Otherwise, rain showers into Lake Charles, and also back out here toward the east of there, seeing rain showers as well. A little farther to the west, another band that's going to get into Baytown, where our Randy Kay is, also back into Houston, and then farther off to the east. Just one more stop for you. Folks in New Orleans, you're probably seeing the lightning off to your west, and a few scattered showers right over New Orleans, but not all that much. We're very, very happy that this band of heavy rain showers, it's been in the same area for a lot of the night, has not worked its way eastward into New Orleans, but has been just to the west of the city, west of Kenner by just a few miles. So there's weather all over Louisiana, Texas, and eventually even by morning hours up into Arkansas.
Chad, question for you. You said a while ago.
Am I sleepy?
No.
Okay.
You said a while ago that at some point this storm is going to get up to about Texarkana and it's just going to stall.
Yeah.
Okay, now here, I want you to explain that to us, but then I want you to explain to me why the winds aloft, those steering winds, won't take that storm to the east and out of that area.
You know what a kidney bean looks like, right?
Yes.
It's kind of got this shape to it, kind of this banana shape looking to it. That's the shape that the high pressure is in to the north of this storm. And if we use this NOAA map that we made a little bit earlier, this area here in blue, this is Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. The blue area here, over 12 to 15 inches, and a X right there, that's the maximum. That is about a 25-inch rainfall total in the next 5 days. Now picture this. Now picture a high with a lobe like a kidney bean way out to the west, then up, and then down again, and then back around.
Oh, boy.
As the high blocks this hurricane from coming up. It can't go west. Oh, there's a lobe there. Oh, can't go east. There's a part there. And it can't go north because there's a part up there too. It's going to get stuck in this high. And then the high is actually going to push it back to the south. And many models take it back offshore.
What?
Stop it for like 48 hours, and then push it back offshore and then back into the Gulf of Mexico. Not for re-involvement, but just, as the days go on, we're going to have to see this very, very heavy rainfall as the week almost goes on, probably to Wednesday or Thursday.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We have Anderson Cooper back with us, who's in Beaumont. Anderson?
Yeah, okay.
I cannot believe that you found your way back out there. That looks like it's impossible to stand in.
I'm sorry, are you talking to me?
Yeah, we're talking to you.
I'm sorry, it's awfully hard to hear you, but we didn't think we could actually get back up on the satellite, but our engineers figured out a way to do it. For us, this is without a doubt the height of the storm. You probably, it doesn't really do it justice what you're seeing behind me, but it is literally this solid wall of white. And it almost, when you're here, it looks like you're in the middle of a snowstorm, like it is just a blizzard of snow, but it's not, it's just water and wind. I have never seen anything like this, and just about everyone who is here with me agrees that they have never seen a storm up close like this, and I'm not frankly quite sure how we're even able to broadcast through it. I have no sense of how strong the winds are at this point, but they are without a doubt the strongest we have seen, and I can't imagine that they can get much stronger than this, or that this could be sustained for much longer. I certainly hope not. I would try to walk out there to show you, but frankly, I've done it twice now, and I've been blown quite it's very easy to get blown over, so I'm just not going to do it again. But it's an extraordinary sight here. I mean, it almost is hard to breathe at times when you're out in this. It sort of sucks the breath right out of you. And there's something actually, when you look at it from a distance, that is beautiful. There's a photographer here who was taking pictures, and they look like paintings. But then, of course, you realize, I mean, the deadly force of these winds and what must be happening in other parts. We're completely cut off here. We have no sense what else is going on in Beaumont. There are no lights anywhere except for this one light that we have, so I'm not sure how the rest of the city is doing. There is flooding in this area now that we are in, but it's not flooding from any storm surge. It is just rainwater that has collected. There has just been this relentless, constant pouring of rain. It's probably the wettest hurricane that I've ever been in. Everything is just completely soaked, and there's just about half a foot of water just on the ground in this area of Beaumont that I'm in. But we're not seeing any large-scale debris flying through the air, but we are seeing bits and pieces of trees. And I mean, I don't know if you can see it, but it's literally this wall. It is like a solid mass, and I mean, it'll just whip you up and blow you away. It's an extraordinary sight, and I wish we could kind of show it to you on a grander scale, because the only thing I can compare it to are sort of special effects in a movie. It is sort of, I don't know, I don't have words to describe it. It is an extraordinary sight, and the power of this storm at its full force here in Beaumont, it is an awesome, a terribly awesome sight to witness.
And Anderson, can you hear us? I have just a quick question. You have the light right in front of you to orient you. If you did not have that light, if you didn't have that light, is the storm of such a force right now where you would find yourself disoriented?
You know, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I know you're saying something to me, but there's so much water in my ear and everything. I'm sorry.
No problem, no problem. Let's bring Chad Myers in, and as we do that, Chad, that's the scene in Beaumont where Anderson is, and in just a few minutes, that scene will shift to where Miles is.
Oh, I can see Miles is getting hit pretty hard already. Yeah, let's not have him stand out there too long. Miles, can you hear us?
You know, that question you asked Anderson, I'll take it. If there weren't lights here and I was in the middle of this, I wouldn't know which way was up. This is unbelievable, because it's so disorienting, because you got things tugging and pushing and pulling at you in so many directions. Well, mostly one direction here, but nevertheless, it's very difficult just to keep your bearings. And if I was out here in the dark, it would be a very scary thing indeed. And I can only imagine what Anderson's dealing with 15 miles to the south of me right now. But what we got going here is not fit for man or beast. It's Chad, what do you think the wind speed would be here now? Do you have any idea?
Well, you're not quite to the eye wall itself. Anderson literally did get the western eye wall, although if you were in Lake Charles and got the eastern eye wall, you have to add 20 miles per hour on top of what Anderson got. I think you're probably in the sustained at 65 with gusts to 80, because Anderson had just had a gust to 92, and you're really not that far away from him.
Yeah, it feels like I'm getting acupuncture here.
Yeah.
You know, it's just Chad, I cannot remember. You tell me. You would know. You have the encyclopedic knowledge of these storms. Right. Do you remember a storm with this much sustained rain? Every other hurricane I've covered, you get rain, you get a band of rain, then it quits, and you get rain, and this has just been completely sustained the whole time.
Yeah, it's a little bit odd. Isabel had an awful lot of rain, and it didn't have nearly the force. It certainly wasn't a Category 3 hurricane at landfall, and winds now down near Anderson Cooper where he was. We just got a report of the wind gust there at 104, and that's in the rain. So that rain is going sideways. So many times you do get a dry hurricane where there are bands of dry spots. There just has been no dry spots at all for you guys at all for hours and hours and hours.
Okay, gentlemen, stay right where you are. Let's keep those pictures up right now. We're at the top of the hour, 5 a.m. Eastern Time, 4 a.m. Central Time right now, and let's give you a bit of a recap of where we are at this time. Hurricane Rita making landfall at 3:40 a.m. Eastern Time, as you can see, with devastating effect. Lake Charles in many areas just devastated by the landfall. Winds, sustained winds, we understand, Catherine, of 100 miles plus. Chad Myers is in the CNN Weather Center here in Atlanta. You see Miles O'Brien, who is with us from Lumberton, Texas, and Anderson Cooper in and out, just being hammered right now in Beaumont, Texas. We can tell you that the path of the storm is such that what is happening right now with Anderson and Beaumont is moving toward Miles and Chad Myers. It has been just an awesome sight to see this storm make landfall and cause the kind of damage with the kinds of winds. Anderson Cooper describing the scene as just a whiteout of wind and rain and water. It has been devastating to see.
Let's talk about some of the damage that we have seen over the last couple hours. About 500,000 people now without power in parts of Texas. We've heard of some buildings destroyed in Lake Charles, or windows blown out of buildings. 3 buildings caught fire in Galveston earlier this evening. And Gary Tuckman is also with us tonight by video phone. There he is, who has also been describing an enormous amount of damage where he is. Gary?
That's right, Catherine. We're here in Beaumont, Texas. We're a little distance away from Anderson, another part of the town, the downtown section of Beaumont, the entertainment, restaurant, club, bar section, which has been very quiet, as you might expect, all night. Conditions over the last 15 minutes have improved for the first time in the last couple of hours. I don't know. I'll have to ask Chad this question. And perhaps we're out of the worst of it in Beaumont, but we've had the worst of it for 2 or 3 hours with windows breaking in businesses surrounding us. The windows inside the building we're in, a restaurant, just bending and moaning, and we've been staying away from them because we've been expecting them to break at any time. They haven't broken, but the roof kind of collapsed and has been leaking inside the building, the second floor. We're on the first floor, so the second floor part of the building has lost part of the roof and it's leaking into the first floor. So there's extensive damage everywhere. We can just see it from the block around, but we can't venture much past this right now because of the conditions. We were talking about the rain a short time ago. Miles was mentioning that. And I have now caught 13 hours and 15 minutes of continuous rain showers. It hasn't let up at all. It has just been a continuous shower, and I find that very unusual, too. I don't remember that happening before, where it just never stops. You usually have these bands that come in, the heavy rains, and then it stops for like an hour, and the heavy rains again. But it has just been continuous, an immense amount of rainfall here in Beaumont, Texas. Earlier today, we were in Port Arthur, 50 miles to the east. A lot of fear of storm surge there. It's still not clear what kind of storm surge they've had. They were talking about 20 feet of storm surge, and we didn't know if it was hyperbole or not. But they chased everyone out of there, I'll tell you that much. It's a city of 57,000 people. We saw nobody when we left. Not even the local police or fire department were there. They went to Lumberton, where Miles O'Brien is right now, and they got out of the town. We can tell you one other thing we've been talking about today. Did more people end up leaving because of Hurricane Katrina? Undoubtedly, no question about it. Because one thing we saw, not only were people evacuating en masse these cities, but they were very fearful. It was very sad seeing that. I mean, people came up to us when they recognized us as the Blue storm with fear in their eyes. How far should I go? What should I do? And that's something we've never seen before in any evacuation proceeding over the years because of what happened in Katrina. Back to you, Gary.
Gary Tuckman, thank you, Gary. To Anderson Cooper now, also in Beaumont, Texas. And Anderson, I'm not going to ask a question. I don't believe you can hear me, but give us, well, we can see it for ourselves.
Yeah, I can sort of hear you. It is still, the winds are just constant now. It is just whipping. It is like thousands of needles just pricking you as you're trying to stand out here. I'm just going to try to get over there because there's you can't even look into it. You cannot look where the wind is pointing because it's just too extreme. But the few times you can glance, it is literally just a white wall in front of you. You have no sense of how far it goes. And as you walk out, the winds just pick up. I'm going to basically stay behind this, but you really get a sense of how fast the winds are moving. It is this solid mass. This must be the height of the storm for us. I couldn't hear what Chad Myers was saying earlier, nor could I hear what Gary Tuckman was saying. He's elsewhere in Beaumont. But right here on the Neches River, this for us is probably as bad as it has been. And I just hope, just seeing the storm as powerful as it is right now, I fear for anyone who may still be out on that roadway who is just in their car. I can't even imagine being in a car stuck on the side of the road in conditions like this. This is probably our last broadcast, because I think we're going to just now just go inside where it's safe. But I'm glad we're able to at least get on the air to show you what we think is for us the height of the storm. I don't think we've ever been able to broadcast in these kind of conditions. So I just want to thank all the technicians here. I don't know how they did it, but they got us up. And hopefully when we see you next, the storm will have died down.
All right, Anderson. Thank you so much, Anderson. Stay safe. Fantastic job tonight, and amazing that you were able to get back up. Bye, Anderson.
Boy, one of the stories we've been reporting this morning is the story of a fire in Houston, Texas. And let's go to our affiliate station, KPRC, and our reporter there on the scene, Priscilla Kwan. And Priscilla, can you give us an update on that fire?
Houston firefighters are still working on the hot spots that continue to flare up in this apartment complex behind me. They do have most of the fire out, but those hot spots continue to flare up. The building is contained to The fire is contained to just one apartment complex, but the main concern here are these nasty winds in this area, 40 to 50 mile per hour winds. And they were afraid that the embers might go to other buildings and the fire would spread over there. When firefighters first arrived, they weren't sure whether there was anybody inside this building. They weren't sure whether people evacuated as a result of Rita coming on its way here, but they say they didn't see anyone standing in the street hollering at them, screaming at them, saying that their loved ones were stuck inside. So as far as for the firefighters are concerned, they don't believe there are any injuries, and there are no injuries to the firefighters either. Again, the winds are at 40 to 50 miles per hour. We were even concerned about raising the pole out of our live truck because we weren't sure whether the winds can actually tip over our live truck. When we were inside editing video for this story, the live truck, as you can imagine, was just rocking back and forth. So again, Houston firefighters are on the scene of this apartment complex. They're working on the hot spots now. No injuries so far, but they say the apartment complex is destroyed. We're live in Houston. I'm Priscilla Kwan. Now back to you.
Okay, Priscilla, thank you.
We told you at the top of the hour about the reports of damage that we're hearing out of Lake Charles, Louisiana, and our own Jason Carroll is at a hospital there in Lake Charles. Jason, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes, absolutely. Let me just give you an update. What we've done is we were outside. We had to move inside. Hospital administrators said it just wasn't safe enough, and you didn't need to stand outside for very long to figure that out. Debris was flying everywhere. I mean, most of the power at this point is out in the Lake Charles area. Pitch black outside, but what was so strange for us was to stand there, and despite the pounding rain and despite the fact of the thunderous wind, you could still hear things cracking and breaking in the distance. Unclear if those were trees or debris that had broken off from a building or was now flying down the street, but you could hear it everywhere. And as I'm standing here in this corridor, I can still hear every now and then a crack, a breaking of something in the distance. But because it's so dark outside, we can't tell where it's coming from. What they've done here is they've sealed off the windows with tape. But even as you're standing here, as the wind gusts come by, the glass almost looks like plexiglass. It's sucked in. It stretches in and out with each gust of wind. And so you move back, obviously further away for safety, but just to watch that happen. something to really see. At this point, we're really still getting hammered very, very heavily. Heavy wind, heavy rain. We have to reach out to the command center. They are down. They lost power. They're on emergency power. Have been unable to get to get in contact with them again. At last word, they told us most of the people in the city have in fact heeded the evacuations, which were mandatory evacuations, which were underway at least for 48 hours and upwards of that at this point. Thankfully, most people got out. For those people who have stayed, they've been told, obviously, it's too dangerous to go outside, even to open the door at this point, step outside at this point. So if you're at home, they're saying you simply have to stay there and make the best of it. Go to the highest point in the house. If you're experiencing some flooding, although it's really the wind at this point that we're really experiencing, being on the eastern half of this storm. They're also saying at this point, put some sort of number on the outside of your house, indicating how many people are inside. That way, if emergency crews come by and you're trapped, they know how many people they have to look for on the inside. But again, we're at Christus St. Patrick Hospital, where people are basically just the nurses and the staff, the doctors that are here are basically doing what they can, just sort of bunkering down and trying to wait for this to pass. In terms of the patients that are here, only 4 patients that are here. They are critically ill patients. They are running on emergency power here. They are being cared for. That is not a worry at this time. What is the worry is that pound wind that is outside, that is just, I mean, I know you can't hear it, but even as I stand here and I'm looking at this window, I'm sort of backing up and moving away as I talk, just because it's that wind that I think is going to be doing a lot of damage out there, and I think we're going to be seeing it at daybreak.
All right, Jason, I'm glad you're safe. Miles O'Brien, not so sure you are safe, standing there in Lumberton, Texas, with no protection from the wind that's blowing your way. What's the situation?
Well, first I want to tell our viewers I'm about 3 steps away from protection. Just to try to illustrate what is coming through here, the power of this storm. It's literally, as the gusts come through, lifting me off my feet. I have to get down real low for fear of becoming a human sail here. Tremendous amount of wind and just absolutely filled with rain. There is not a break in the rain. Not a break in the rain at all. And it's been like this for hours. You know, we've been talking about how well the evacuation has gone. 90% evacuation. These 2 counties, Hardin and Jefferson County, have about 200,000 people in them. 90% evacuation, there still are 20,000 people that are in their homes right now in these 2 counties. Go all the way down to the coast, Sea Pass, and Port Arthur. So there are a lot of people that are riding this out in their homes who, in many cases, may be regretting their decision to do that right now. We told you a little while ago about the chief and police here and his officers going out to get one family that was in a house where the tree came down, a family of 6. They're okay. There's a shelter of last resort here in a nursing home where they even have a generator. But it'll be very interesting to see. It'll be very interesting to see what kind of damage has been left. They told a wild tale of driving through with trees down. They had to cut through 6 trees. 1 tree went down before them as they tried to do that rescue. So clearly, Lumberton, even the fact that it's 50 miles inland, is not enough to shelter it from this storm.
Boy, Miles, you know, the brunt of this is still to come for you. I mean, I want to tell you to grab a wall or something just to brace yourself. I understand what you're doing there, but yeah, I guess you understand what I'm suggesting to you.
No, don't worry. Here's what I can do, Tony. Let me just show you. Okay. 3 steps. And look, see, I'm under a portico and I'm protected. So that's the key here. Is you got to have a good fallback position, which is what we have here. So we're on the leeward of this brick building. Yeah, Catherine, go ahead.
Just curious, you've been at this location for some time now. The building where you are, has there been any damage there?
No, well, you know, actually, I was standing there, and one of the asphalt shingles fell down on me. That was kind of a wake-up call because
I guess so.
I didn't see it. I didn't see it coming, and that's the point here. Is that excuse me while I hoist up my waders. The point is, you got to be careful in the darkness. It is particularly dangerous. What I do know is that I've got a good clear shot in this parking lot, and there's nothing. I know that there's nothing over there because we scouted this out beforehand, and we knew the wind was going to be coming this way. That's north, that's south. Anderson, Cooper's, and Gary Tuckman 15 miles that way, and I am in it's all relative. These are calculated risks, but we have fallback positions. We can go inside to the command center if we need to. And our satellite truck, fortunately, is also being protected by the police headquarters. So, it's part of telling the story, but it's also at a certain point you got to know when to fall back.
Okay. Miles, appreciate it. Really do. We want to take you now to the National Hurricane Center, and Max Mayfield, as you know, is the director of the center, and Max joins us now. And Max, we want to give we want to give Anderson and we want to give Miles as much information and everyone at home as much information as we can as to the current path and when they might start to see a bit of a break in this this ferocious activity.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I've talked to so many people. I can't remember who's in which city right now,
yeah.
But I can tell you that you can still see the northern side of the eye wall here is very, very intense. Over Beaumont and extending eastward to still to nearly to Lake Charles here. So, that's going to eventually spread on inland, but the winds are still strong, well to the south of there, even on the back side. And I think as long as those winds remain strong and out of the south here, that storm surge is going to keep piling in here, especially in that area around Cameron, Louisiana, and northward into Calcasieu Lake.
Chad, we know you want to jump right in there. You've been on top of this storm all night long.
Well, we're all concerned about that storm surge, Max. I was wondering whether you have access to any river gauges or buoys that we don't have access to. Do we know that the water's coming up?
I think we lost the one gauge down there that we had been looking at, and I can't really tell you what that water's doing now, but at least our storm surge simulation, shows the water still coming up. And just because the center is on shore here, people shouldn't think that that water is not still rising. It is on the east side of the eye, and it's not going to have a chance to drain back out until those winds really slacken off, and that's going to be well into the afternoon.
We've had reports of major structural damage in Lake Charles. Have you heard of damage anywhere else?
No, you've probably heard more of those damage, that damage information than I have here tonight. But we should, I would think, start getting a lot more here as the sun comes up.
Catherine? Are
you expecting to make any changes in the amount of rainfall from this storm or in the storm surge at all over what you've seen the last few hours?
I think the rainfall, 10 to 15 inches here is going to hold us for the next 24 hours or so. What we're really concerned about with the rainfall is, a 3, 4, and 5 day period. If it really does slow down or loop around, that's when we're going to have a real problem. And if that occurs, we can still get up to 25 inches. The storm surge with the radius of maximum winds around 15 miles or so that we had at landfall, probably not going to be quite as high as we were forecasting earlier. It may not get up to 15 feet, but to 20 feet, but it may be, 13, 14, or 15 feet in some areas.
And Max, just a final quick question. A mistake to think that since this storm has made landfall that it will quickly break apart.
That's right. It'll probably lose about half the intensity in 12 hours or so, and we need to remember that we almost always have loss of life well after landfall,
That's right.
From the wind, the trees falling down on the cars or on people, and from that inland freshwater flooding.
Max Mayfield, thank you so much for being with us throughout the night and keeping us up to date on this storm.
Okay, the mayor of Morgan City, is that what you're telling me, Eddie? Okay, the mayor of Morgan City is on the line with us. Mr. Mayor, thank you for being with us. What is your name, please?
My name is Tim Mott.
Tim Mott. All right. Mr. Mayor, give us a sense of what you're seeing and what reports you're getting about how your city is holding up.
Okay, well, we're still experiencing tropical storm winds, so we haven't seen any hurricane force winds, but I tell you, it's been pretty steady, and it's been going for a good while now. We also have rain bands. Right now, we're not experiencing any rain, but it comes and goes as these bands pass. It's probably been in the 4-inch range, something like that.
Do you still have power?
We've got probably about half the city on, half the city in dark.
We've been hearing some bad reports out of Lake Charles. You're south of Lake Charles, right?
We're slightly south, but we're a good bit east of Lake Charles, probably 120 miles or so east of Lake Charles.
And what about the state of your city before this storm hit? What about evacuations and who was left in your town?
We didn't evacuate in Morgan City. We were most concerned about storm surge, and we have a good levee system. We're kind of similarly situated to New Orleans. We're completely surrounded by water and consequently completely surrounded by a levee system. And so our big concern was storm surge and of course, getting the rainwater out of the city by pump. So far, we've made several trips out to the waterfront to check the river levels, continue to monitor that. The National Weather Service indicated that we should expect a storm surge in the 10-foot range. Right now, the water level in Morgan City in the river is at about +6, so we continue to watch that.
Have you had any reports of 911 calls, that kind of thing, in your town tonight?
No. We've had several calls for transformers sparking, lines burning, that type of thing, so the fire department stayed pretty busy tonight, as has the electrical crew.
Mr. Mayor, how'd you fare with Katrina?
With Katrina, I was just speaking with a police officer who spent the night on the road in both cases, and he's telling me this one he thought was a little more intense.
That Rita?
Rita is a little more intense for us. Of course, and I think the big difference is we're on the east side of the storm, and of course, for Katrina, we were on the western side of the storm, and so we, it's just the difference that you have to deal with. We probably were actually a little closer to Katrina's landfall as the crow flies. It might have been 90 miles, whereas here we may be 120, 130 miles away.
Hey, Mayor, we've got Chad Myers here for you. I bet you have some questions for him. I know he wants to talk to you.
Mr. Mayor, I do want to talk to you. I want you to know that your winds are still out of the east-southeast here, and you don't really have your surge yet as you would as the winds come out of the southwest later on in the storm, getting through Sweet Bay Lake and then on up into your city. So don't let your guard down just because the eye is on shore. As your winds shift, that's when your maximum surge is going to come on shore, probably still 4, maybe 5 hours away.
Well, we'll be continuing to watch that.
Yeah.
All right, Mayor, thank you for being with us. We hope to check back with you when the light of day comes to see how that town fared.
That town and a lot of towns. Anderson Cooper is on the line with us right now. And Anderson, give us a sense of, well, we're hoping that you're in the exactly square in the middle of that eye, and maybe you've got a bit of calm, but somehow I don't think so.
Yeah, no, actually, it's still pretty bad outside. We've actually just we've called it a night. We're a city manager kindly opened up a door for us in a city building, so we are actually just camped out in the lobby, just kind of sopping wet and just glad to be out of that storm because I don't even know if I was coherent the last few times I talked to y'all. I couldn't really hear what you were asking me, but I've just never seen a storm at its height like that for such a sustained amount of time, and it was so eerie. Imagine there's just no lights around, and one car headlight, and that's basically the only light we had. And it literally was. It was like a snowstorm. It was just this complete blizzard. It was a complete whiteout. But then, of course, it's not snow. It's water and it's wind, and you really get a sense of the power of Mother Nature, the power of this storm, and we all saw with Katrina what a storm like this can do, and the havoc it can wreak. And I just I hope and I pray that tomorrow morning when the sun comes up and the winds die down, and we know it's still going to be raining, but we're able to get out and the police are able to get out. I just hope people are okay, because it's when you see it up close and you see it that close, you realize just how small we all are, and how quickly we can all succumb to a storm like this.
Got a question for you. One of the things that you do so well, and one of the things we do here, is we try to change perspectives, shift perspectives. Have you had occasions to think about the folks that might have stayed behind and tried to ride this thing out? Have you thought about the emergency personnel who are charged with sort of making sure that the homes that are left behind, that the streets, that the businesses are taken care of? Have you had occasions to think about the pets that may have been left behind? I'm sure you have.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to the Beaumont Chief of Police earlier tonight, and he said, people's property will be protected, people's lives will be protected the best we can. They have all their officers on duty. I think it was some 250 or 240 officers. All of them showed up for work. They are all in a secure building, and I'm sure are eager to get out there as soon as they can, as soon as these hurricane force winds stop, and start patrolling and start helping people. I know the 911 calls that they had been receiving in Beaumont, because I talked to the fire chief a while back. He said that at that time that they were mostly people calling in to report possible fires from transformers exploding. So I certainly, the great majority of people in Beaumont left. There's no doubt about it. There were 110, 115,000 people in the city. The mayor said he believes some 95% of people may have gone. But those people who did leave to stay behind, probably the people who didn't have as much access to vehicles, who didn't have some place to go, and the construction of their homes is certainly something which, when you see the winds the way they are right now, you just imagine being in one of those homes where, the roof can get blown off, or bits and pieces can get blown off very easily. So I just hope they're in a safe place. I hope they're in a small room in their bathrooms and in their bathtubs, and I figured out a way to just make it through. It's going to be a little bit longer, and then this thing is going to die down. We hope here in Beaumont.
Anderson, not just the wind, but we heard you talk about several times during your live reporting tonight the relentless amount of rainfall that was falling, and this, as you described it, just a wall of rain.
Yeah, and it just keeps going. I mean, it does not stop. We're all of us who've been covering this. We've got a crew, probably got 6 or 7 people right now, and we're just completely wrinkled, and it's just a constant, steady pounding of rain, sometimes more intense than others. But just the amount of water is something I think it's more than any hurricane I've seen. In other ones, Chad and I have done together. You can go through periods of time where rain almost stops completely, and but it has just been relentless. It has just been nonstop, and you think it's going to let up, and then it doesn't. It just seems to get worse. It looks like things have died down a little bit from the height from when we were broadcasting, but it is still very nasty out there, and probably will be for quite a while to come.
All right, Anderson, thank you so much for being with us throughout this. You have to be just exhausted, if not from anything, just standing out there in that type of wind and rain for so many hours for us.
And Anderson and Catherine, I'm looking at the preview monitor right now of Miles O'Brien, and Miles is getting hit with gusts, and he is literally having to just duck down to get low to try to lower his center of gravity like that, so he isn't blown away. And I've been watching you do that for the last couple of minutes, and I don't know that you can sink low enough. That wind is really coming in on you.
Yeah, we're getting to the point. We're getting on the edge of the point where it may not be a wise idea to be standing out here. I feel like I'm being pressure washed, Tony Harris. It's unbelievable. Just a solid sheet of water, and the parking lot now behind me is flooding. We just watched a steady rise of the water here. This is the wettest hurricane I've ever seen. It has just not stopped. We've said it over and over again, but clearly there's going to be some implications far beyond the coastal areas because of all the rain involved, and the possibility. Forecasters are telling us. I got to get down. If I stand up, I end up like a human spinnaker, and I'm going to be somewhere where I don't want to be. But the forecasters are saying that this storm, as it moves inland, is going to stall out. So what you're talking about is this rain, although maybe not horizontal, but still coming down for a couple, 3 days, and that is a prospect that has got to worry this entire region, because it's just hard to imagine the amount of force and power and water that is just being dumped down here in the city of Lumberton. Once again, what I'm seeing now, probably the early hurricane force winds. We've got asphalt shingles coming off the roof. We've got light. I'm sorry, what did you say?
No, we're with
We didn't say anything.
Okay, we got 3 or 4 trees down, and we've got a structure that went down there, signage and so forth. Yes, go ahead, Catherine.
Absolutely not saying a thing. I believe your IFB may be acting up a little bit, Miles.
Oh, okay, yeah, well, things do act up in these storms, but what we're seeing now, I think, is the beginning of the kind of weather that was enough to drive Anderson inside. So we're going to be watching it very closely here. At this point, we're going to hold our position because, as I told you, all I have to do is take a few steps here, and I can get into, boy, that is a relief, I'll tell you. It's a lot easier to talk out here because it's like a jet engine that is constantly running overhead, that sheet of water, and it only seems to be getting worse.
All right, Miles, thank you very much, and thank you very much for stepping behind some cover there.
Yeah.
A lot of people concerned about your safety right now. Randy Kay has been in Baytown. We talked to her not too long ago. The winds were starting to pick up there, not as severe as where we have seen Miles and where we've seen Anderson. But Randy, on the phone with us now, what's the situation in Baytown now?
Well, Catherine, they've picked up enough to drive us inside. I had mentioned to you in our last live picture that we were going to have to possibly put our satellite dish down because it was just wobbling during that last live shot, which is not a safe thing to have going on. So we moved inside to safer ground till we wait out some of these really strong winds that are passing through right now. This is the worst that we've seen. We've been out there about 5 or 6 hours, and we've had a lot of wind and a lot of rain, but this is certainly the worst of it. Spoke with the city manager, though, and the good news is that all they're seeing here in Baytown so far, we won't know really until daylight, but all they're seeing right now here is some downed power lines and a lot of people without power. But for the most part, they haven't seen any severe flooding. They were expecting a possible storm surge of anywhere from 10 to 13 feet. Parts of Baytown are pretty high and parts of Baytown are pretty low, so it all depends on where you live, on what's going to happen here.
And what about the refineries there, Randy? I know that one of the largest ones is not too far from where you are.
Right. We're just a few miles from the ExxonMobil refinery, which is the largest in the United States. And they've shut all of the refineries down because Baytown sits here on the Houston Ship Channel. And there's about 200 refineries and chemical plants along there. And a lot of them house some pretty lethal chemicals: phosgene, chlorine, ammonia, crude oil, and if there was any type of accident or any kind of leak caused by some of these pretty severe winds or possible flooding even, the Shell plant that we visited yesterday is just about a mile from the water. So they were ready for anything, they said, and they were leaving a few employees behind. Some of them have more than 1,000 employees, and they were just going to shut down and leave some security and, of course, some environmental experts just in case there might be some type of accident there. But they're hoping, fingers crossed, and if there is, they say they're prepared to deal with it.
The effects will be felt around the country. Randy, thank you very much. Randy Kay for us in Baytown. It is 5:30 in the morning now, Eastern Time. I guess we should get everyone up to date on where we are.
3:40 a.m. Eastern Time. Rita made landfall. Devastating effect. Lake Charles. We've heard from a number of our correspondents, Jason Carroll, Rick Sanchez in Lake Charles, in that area, pretty much devastated by the storm. Everyone waiting for first light just to see how bad the damage actually is in Lake Charles. Category 3 storm made landfall at 3:40 a.m. this morning. And then, as we've seen in reports and pictures out of Galveston, Texas, where there was a fire there, Houston, Texas, where there was a fire there, that's kept the firefighters very busy. You've just heard from Randy Kay in Baytown. Also, as you take a look at the radar right now, many areas, Galveston, Lake Charles, Sabine Lake, just being devastated, overrun by this Category 3 storm with intense winds, 85-mile-an-hour winds, some gusts of over 100 miles an hour. Anderson Cooper being forced inside by the strength of the winds. Miles O'Brien may shortly have to go inside as well. Randy Kay being forced inside now. She can't keep up her satellite truck any longer, having to go inside because of the power of Rita right now as it has made landfall on the Gulf Coast of Louisiana and Texas.
That's right, and we have about 500,000 people without power right now in Texas. Doesn't look like they're going to be getting it anytime soon. One of the things that we were concerned about when this storm hit are fires, of course, not able to fight those fires. And as Tony mentioned, there were quite a fire was burning in Galveston, Texas earlier tonight. We also had an apartment fire in Houston. Representative Gene Green is on the phone with us now in North Houston. What can you tell us is the situation in Houston now?
Well, we're one of the ones that are without power. We've been without power for about an hour. I was actually at the command center this afternoon and to see how everything was organized, and once the storm is finished, or at least we can get the folks out there, they'll be either in East Harris County, that's part of our congressional district. I have Baytown, Pasadena, and the East County area, or over in the Beaumont-Port Arthur area.
How do you feel that Houston is going to come out of this? So is it too early to tell, just from what you're hearing, what you're being told about what has happened in Houston over the last 5 hours?
I think what we'll see is, even though we're 110 miles away from where the ice coming ashore, we'll see lots of our trees damaged. Mm-hmm. And, depending on how quick it is to get the power back, a lot of folks are going to be not more than just inconvenienced, but I don't see much damage from the wind except for the trees.
All right.
Representative Green, this is Tony Harris with Catherine. Just a quick question. You have to take a bit of a broader view of this storm and talk to us, if you would, about what you believe the impact will be of this storm on, I guess the oil industry, the oil infrastructure, the gas infrastructure, refinery infrastructure there along your coast.
Well, coming on Katrina, that damaged the offshore production so much. This just moved a little further to the west, where we also have platforms off, western Louisiana and Texas. Mm-hmm. So we'll see that problem of the crude oil. The concern we had is I have a congressional district that we produce 25% of the refined product, and all those refineries were shut down as of Thursday because they could have had more damage to them. Now, that was because of the storm surge concern. So I think once the wind dies down, we'll see those refineries back up much more, depending on their damage. But without the high water flooding that we saw at the refineries along the Mississippi, hopefully we'll be able to get back up quickly.
How quickly do you think?
Well, it takes 72 hours to ramp down a refinery. And so you have to start it back up, I would say probably at least 72 hours. Plus, to get the personnel, a lot of them may be, worried about their own homes that are damaged. So, but I know the industry is going to get it back because, one, they're losing money every day that refinery's not open.
That's right.
Well, are you pleased with the evacuations that you had in Houston? A lot of suffering along the highway there as people tried to get out of town. Looking back on that, are you glad you saw the type of evacuation, the number of evacuations, or would you like to have seen that take place differently?
Well, 2 days ago we thought the storm was going to be, just south of Galveston, and that would have made the Houston area and our ship channel and our industry the dirty side. And so that's why we literally had about 2 million people move away from the coast and even from the southern part of the city of Houston. And I think we could do better. We learned from every storm. We learned from the problems they did in New Orleans. In fact, not only in our district, but our county and our city made sure our nursing home residents and our disabled had options to be where they could be evacuated. And so we learned that we have to be proactive on that. In fact, I was at a nursing home today just to make sure everything was fine. And but I think we need to look at pre-positioning fuel for our evacuees. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't do that as well, and we're asking both the state of Texas and FEMA to pre-position fuel for people coming back. Hopefully when they're returning in the next few days, they will leave wherever they are with a full tank. But if it's the gridlock like we saw, then we don't want to have the same problem in reverse.
That's why I bring this up, because there is discussion about having a better plan next time. What will be the first thing you do tomorrow morning?
Well, first thing we're going to do is want to evaluate where we're at in our own district, so I can go to the state and also to FEMA, because we have people on the ground now. We have regular military, we have our National Guard, of course all our first responders for our city and our county that that have been pre-positioned literally in the Reliant Astrodome complex. So they will either be dealing with what's the problem we have in Harris County or moving to the east because of the damage both in southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana. But that's what we'll do once the winds die down and people can safely travel. The concern is that not everybody should come back home because, one, the power's out. And so if you're coming back, you're not going to be, you're not coming back to power. Hopefully our utility companies, both CenterPoint for the Houston area and Entergy in the Beaumont, Louisiana area, will be able to have the power back up as quick as possible.
Representative Green, all right, let me go off the beaten path here for just a second. Evacuation drills. Why not institute as a civil exercise? You just mentioned that we learned something from all of these storms. Why not find out ahead of time if our evacuation plans will actually work? Why not institute an evacuation drill? We give everybody half a day off or whatever is necessary, and we try the plan out.
If we have many more storms like we've had in Katrina in Louisiana and in this one, you're right, we need to. You know, our EMS personnel and our emergency services folks war game this, but they don't typically get the people involved. That's right. The average our constituents. So, but if we continue to have these storms, I don't know if we need to have a drill. We're going through the drill in real life. Seems like the last 3 weeks in Louisiana and Texas.
Yeah. Representative Green.
And we learn from everyone. We've learned from this one. We learned from the problems in New Orleans. And hopefully we have not had the number of deaths that they did in New Orleans.
Well, with the type of things that were happening along Interstate 45 and 10 over the last 24 hours, I can guarantee you there are some people who might be very supportive of some type of drill to not have to go through what they went through on that highway.
Yeah, I think we'll analyze it and see our problems. And I can tell you the one is when people spend 10 hours in a car and creeping down a road, then you have to have fuel options for them.
All right. Representative Jean Green, thank you for being with us. Good luck to you, and we hope that it's mostly good news tomorrow as you venture out when the sun comes up. Thank you very much.
David Mattingly is with us now. Is that right, Eddie? David Mattingly, there he is in Galveston, Texas. And David, sorry, long night. Give us a sense of the situation on the ground where you are right now.
Well, since we last talked to you, the rain is just about stopped here. There's still some drops blowing in, but it's mostly dry wind gusts that we're seeing right now. We took this last half hour, last 45 minutes, the opportunity to drive around and try and see what's out there right now. We drove into town and we were actually finding that some small pockets that still have electricity right now. And as we were driving into town, we did find some areas where there was some very, very minor street flooding. It was nothing to the point where you couldn't find a street that was impassable or anything like that. This town has a lot of very old, large trees. Of course, there are some tree limbs down, but they were rather small limbs. We didn't see any large tree limbs blocking any roads or anything like that, or any uprooted trees from this storm. So this is turning out to be a whole lot better than what they feared just 2 days ago when they issued the mandatory evacuation order. It may be that the big story out of this storm for Galveston will be how successful their evacuation was when they got 90% of their population off this island and to the mainland and to safety. Of course, that came at a time when they thought they were going to get a Category 5 or Category 4 storm with the eye going just south of here, meaning the worst of the storm might have been coming here. So they were very worried. At the time, even the mayor had asked for 1,500 National Guards troops and a couple of search and rescue teams to be on the standby to come onto the island after the storm. With the way things are right now, I really am not sure if they're going to need any of those troops or any of those search and rescue teams. But again, some minor flooding being reported. We did see some power lines down in some places. There was one telephone pole that was smoldering. Apparently some of the lines had crossed and started a small fire there. And earlier tonight there was a fire. A couple of buildings burned down to the ground, but firemen went out in the wind and the rain. They actually went to their fire engine, which they had taken to the Civic Center parking deck for protection. They pulled out of there, went down, and made sure that none of the other buildings around were catching on fire. And you would think that with all of this rain and all this water from the hurricane, that fire would not be a problem. But when these buildings get damaged, maybe some sort of electrical fire starts, the building starts to burn, all of this wind just sort of acts like a blast furnace, just feeding that fire. So those 3 buildings really almost went completely to the ground. Very well involved when firemen arrived, but they were able to keep other buildings from nearby from going up in flames as well. So we're hearing from the public official you were just talking to about the lessons learned. The big lesson they learned here was how well they can get their population off this island when the threat is coming. And we'll see when the sun comes up just how widespread, what kind of damage we really have here.
Well done, well said. All right, David Mattingly for us in Galveston, Texas. David, thank you.
Some of the worst damage that we've heard over the last few hours has been coming out of Lake Charles, and our Jason Carroll has taken refuge in a hospital there. He's telling us a lot of wind damage, and the rain continues to fall there. Jason?
Absolutely, both wind and rain. I just want to give you an update very quickly. We just got off the phone with Lieutenant Gordon Fontenot. He's with the Lake Charles Police Department. They are getting reports of the terminal at the Lake Charles Airport. One of the terminals there may have sustained severe damage. Also, they're getting reports of a possible collapse of an overpass. These are reports that are coming into the Lake Charles Police Department. The problem is they are like we are at this point, and they are bunkered down, and they have been unable to get out and make a visual inspection of these reports that are coming in. But they are hearing these reports. They have been unable to get out there and take a look, just because at this point it's just not safe. As you know, we've been talking about all night and all morning now at this point. We took refuge inside this hospital here, Christus St. Patrick Hospital, simply because there was too much going on outside in terms of debris flying by. The wind was just simply too strong. Hospital staff said, look, you can stay outside, but we're locking things up and batting things down. If you're outside, you're staying outside. So we decided for safety's sake, we'd come inside, and the wind has been unrelentless for the past several hours. Lake Charles at this point really still taking a beating.
I don't know if I'm hearing things, but it sounds like we can hear a howling. Is that the wind?
Yeah, it is. You're really hearing. You can imagine if you can hear it on your end with this cell phone, and I'm in this corridor. Imagine what it sounds like here. That's what it is. That is the howling of the wind, and there are 2 double doors, glass doors at the end of the corridor. And I can tell you, when the wind really kicks up, it looks like plexiglass. The glass itself actually bends. It's ebb and flow with the wind. It's incredible to watch. Obviously, you want to get close to.
Who is in the hospital with you?
Well, at this point, it's mostly hospital staff who are standing by waiting in the event that there are any patients that need to be brought in. There are 4 critically ill patients that are here. The hospital is operating under emergency power at this point, so they are being cared for. No concerns for those patients at this point.
All right, Jason. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Stay inside that hospital. The reports are not good out of Lake Charles, right?
Jason describing unrelenting winds. Chad Myers, if you're in the middle of this, as a number of our reporters and correspondents are, and our anchors are, you want this to end, but may not end for a while.
Not really, not for Lake Charles. They got the eastern eye wall right here, so even though there's no real rain showers in this picture, the wind is still spinning around the eye, which is located not that far from Beaumont now, not that far east of Beaumont, probably 30 miles. And so the wind is still coming in right here for Beaumont, for Anderson Cooper, on up to Lumberton, a little bit farther to the north. It is still coming in as well. Now, if you're a little bit farther to the south and to the east of there, if you're actually in the eye itself, then yes, the wind has let up, but it's going to come back again from the other direction in no time. I have a couple tornado warnings that I want to get to you. It's St. Helena Parish and Tangipahoa Parish in Louisiana, including the county of Amity in southern Mississippi. Tornado warning until 5 o'clock Central Time. And then for southwestern Lincoln and eastern Franklin until 5:15. I checked out both of these storms on the Doppler radar, and there's some spin in the atmosphere. Not that there's a tornado on the ground, just that there's some spin out there, and that spin could actually cause a tornado to touch down. The one here, Tangiapoa, right about here up to the south and southeast of Hammond. And you can even see a couple of rain showers coming into New Orleans Parish and Orleans Parish as well this morning. Not as much rain, though, in this area here in New Orleans as was just to the west of the city, about 30 miles west of the city, 2 to 3 inches of rainfall. And there has not been that much in New Orleans, although some of the rainfall gauges along the river do have about 4 inches in some spots just from those scattered showers. And you can see some of these are big, bright red things, so there could be heavy showers coming in and out of New Orleans all day today.
Yeah, Chad, just for people who might be waking up and joining us now, Category 3, Rita, makes landfall about 3:30 Eastern Time. Can you show us? It was right on that Louisiana-Texas border at Sabine Pass.
Between Sabine Pass, which is very, very close between Galveston and Cameron, Louisiana. Galveston down there, Cameron, Louisiana right here. Here's Port Arthur. There's the Sabine Pass, and just on the Louisiana side is where the eye actually came in onshore, right back there behind me. Right about there is where this storm came onshore, and now it has traveled only just really a short distance because it's only been onshore for, 2.5 hours? But it's back there.
All right, thanks, Chad.
Okay. One more quick question, Chad.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before, but I'm real interested in your perspective again on this. We talked about it during Hurricane Katrina, the science of it as it comes together. You're teaching us a lot about these storms. Are folks like you learning a few things?
At this late date, after being on the air 12 hours, no, just how long I can actually stay awake.
Well, you've been fabulous for us. Thank you for staying. I know you were supposed to be off like at midnight, and he has stayed with us to get Rita on land, and we appreciate you walking us through.
I'll ask that question again in a couple of days.
Okay, fine. All right. See if I learned anything. How to sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
Good.
All right, Chad, thank you.
You bet.
CNN's Ted Rowlands has been in New Orleans throughout the night, a city that the last thing they need are more wind, more rain. Ted, can you hear us?
Yeah, I hear you, and we're getting some rain now, but it has been relatively dry, which has been good news. It has been windy off and on, but for the most part, this storm has bypassed New Orleans, and that is very good news considering where we were this morning. It looked very dire. Very early this morning at 10 o'clock, a levee broke, and the lower Ninth Ward, the eastern side of the city, flooded again. This was an area that was devastated during Katrina, and it is still underwater now because of that levee break. They were not able to repair the levee tomorrow. They're hoping to get out there and make some repairs and then pump that side of the city or start to pump it dry again. They're crossing their fingers that overnight a surge will not breach the levee on the western side, which would flood potentially downtown again and put New Orleans back at square one. Most of the folks have left town, so the lives that are potential lives that would be in danger, that's not a factor now. The property really isn't a factor either because most of the damage has been done. But you can imagine after getting this place dry at last, the psychological nightmare that people would go through. Some of these people have gone back to what was left of their homes. But at this point, they're keeping their fingers crossed. We have no reports of any more levee breaks since this morning.
That is terrific news, Ted.
All right, Ted Rowlands, thank you. So here we are, 3:40 a.m., Category 3 storm, major hurricane, 85 mile per hour winds, gusts of over 120 miles an hour.
That storm, Rita, hitting right there on the Texas-Louisiana border, as he said, about 3:30 this morning Eastern time on the Sabine Pass. Most of the damage we're hearing, everyone, has been from the Lake Charles, Louisiana area. And we've had a couple of fires breaking out throughout the night in Galveston, Texas, and an apartment fire in Houston. Overall, though, it does look like from where this storm made landfall, just northeast of where it made landfall, we're seeing some of the heaviest damage.
And Catherine, it's going to look like perhaps tomorrow, one of the amazing stories is going to be that the evacuation plan, never mind the fact that there were terrible delays, terrible traffic jams, several accidents, the tragic story of the bus exploding and the loss of life connected to that. It sounds like one of the stories, one of the good news stories that come out of this is going to be that the evacuation plan for the most part worked in this case, that there were several lessons learned from Hurricane Katrina put into effect this time around. when the National Hurricane Service made the prediction and started to chart the course of this storm, when initially it looked like it would slam into Galveston, that Galveston was evacuated, that other areas along that Texas-Louisiana border, those areas were evacuated. We understand now that Lake Charles, we're probably going to find out at first light that Lake Charles has been heavily damaged by this storm. We'll still have to wait to see just how much damage was done. Sabine Pass and some of the other areas, Beaumont, Texas, also Lumberton, where Miles O'Brien has been overnight, and you mentioned Beaumont, and that's where Anderson Cooper has been for most of the evening.
But we need to remind everyone, though, this is far from over. We have a hurricane that is now on land and is going to sit there for some time, as a high-pressure system is going to keep all of that rain falling on this area. Some 25 inches of rain expected. Chad Myers, last thoughts on this tonight?
You know, it's kind of ironic that this storm is moving so quickly now, 12, 13 miles per hour, moving very quickly onshore and on up into parts of eastern Texas. And then it's forecast to absolutely stop. Stop over Texarkana and Shreveport, and that entire area stops the storm. The high pressure up there that you were talking about stops the storm and actually pushes it back south. It may actually exit back into the Gulf of Mexico again before the end of the weekend. That is absolutely unbelievable. The storm surge comes through, blows all of this water to Port Arthur, to Lake Charles, and then the storm stops. This is kind of a raw map, but it gives you the idea. A NOAA map right here from Texarkana through southwest Louisiana into Louisiana itself. 24 inches, 24.5 is that number. That's the peak rainfall number. Everywhere you see that's blue, the forecast is for over 15 inches of rain in the next 3 to 5 days right there. And this could spread left or right because the storm just may not stop. It may sneak a little one way or sneak a little another way before it gets pushed back out into the Gulf.
Do we know how much rain has fallen? I know it's with this kind of wind, nothing's working, right?
Well,
but
it is hard to measure going sideways.
Right. Kind of hard to measure anything. But we've heard Anderson and Miles, who have been through so many of these, talk repeatedly about the wettest hurricane they've ever seen.
Right.
Never seen such wall of rain, just relentless for hours.
It really didn't have the breaks. A lot of the storms that Anderson and I have been through, it'll rain for an hour, then let up for another hour, and then rain for 50 minutes and back and forth. This thing had a solid wall of rain, an entire rain shield as it came on shore. And we do have some Doppler radar estimates. And how they do that, the Doppler shoots for a long time and it sees, okay, red, yellow, okay, a little bit of blue, and it can add up how much it thinks has come down. And some of the Doppler estimates are around 10 inches. But like we said, if the rain is going sideways, it's very difficult to measure. And if it's in your rain gauge, it may be blowing out the top or whatever. But the Hurricane Center and also all the National Weather Service offices all have these windproof rain gauges that they'll be able to tell how much rain actually came in. The storm now moving away, I think Lake Charles out of the rain for quite some time. There's a big dry area here. A lot of dry air got gulped in off the hill country of Texas, got gulped into the storm and rotated itself, wrapped itself into this area here. We've noticed all night long that the southern half of the storm really wasn't filled in. It never had a southern eye wall for most of the night, and it still doesn't. There you see Beaumont seeing some rain showers now, and there's not much. There are not many cities up here east of Lake Charles, north of Beaumont. It is really a very rural area.
What did you say it's
Texas.
moving now as it's hit land? It's fully on land now? What?
Northwest at 12.
12.
How wide?
And then it's going to go to 0.
Yeah, how wide is that? The whole storm, you're just in the center of it, and it's...
Yeah, we measured it probably, 4 hours ago, and it was 375 miles across. From tropical storm force wind to tropical storm force wind, 375 miles across.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Nothing else out there that you can tell us about?
There are a couple of tropical depressions out there, but nothing that has any formation whatsoever. There is Philippe. Philippe is out there kind of affecting Bermuda, but that's a completely different storm. That was the P storm after Ophelia. Then there was no Q storm at all because there are not enough Q names. I guess you got Quentin, but not too many other ones. And then obviously you went to R. The next one, if there is one, hopefully not, but there probably will.
All right, but gentlemen, we're not even done with Rita yet.
Well, right, that'll be
that was a throwaway question. I didn't expect that there would be a real answer, and there's more activity out there.
Well, it is boy, girl, so next one's Stan.
Chad, thank you so much
All right,
again for being with us throughout the night. CNN's coverage just beginning.
It
we
really
have a lot
is.
more to Miles O'Brien is going to take us through the early morning hours here.
American Morning is next.
I'm Miles O'Brien in Lumberton, Texas. Rita is barreling through with 120-mile-an-hour winds. Trees are down, structures damaged. And in the midst of all of this, police are responding to people who need help. I'll have a live report.
Good morning. Welcome, everybody. You're watching a very special edition of American Morning coming to you on Saturday. We'll be here tomorrow as well. We're going to update you on the very latest with Hurricane Rita, starting with, as we just heard, the wind speed, about 120 miles an hour. Rita making landfall a little bit after 3:30 in the morning. And as you can see, Lumberton, Texas, where Miles is this morning, obviously very hard hit. Category 3 storm when Rita made landfall. We are waiting, though, obviously, for first light to determine the actual damage that has been done. Port Charles in Texas looks like it's going to be, Port Charles, rather, in Louisiana, looks like it's going to be a big focus of this storm. Again, waiting for first light. Let's get right to our severe weather expert, Chad Myers, who's been tracking the storm really for days. Chad, good morning to you. It came right on the Louisiana-Texas border.
It did.
How bad does it look at this point for those areas most affected?
You know, for that area, Cameron Parish really hit pretty hard. Probably a storm surge in excess of 10 feet and still coming up because the storm is still pulling water out of the Gulf of Mexico and pulling that up to the Lake Charles area, like you said, and then back even into Port Arthur and Beaumont. Although we don't have any really reports, all the gauges we had that are coming out of the rivers, they just stopped working at some point during the night. I assume because the winds got to about 120 miles per hour and the gauges lost their antenna to be sending the signals back. But there you go. There's Beaumont right there. Port Arthur pretty much in the clear now, although winds are still gusting to 80. We're not seeing that big heavy band. Where you see the red is where the heaviest wind is. Still back into Lake Charles, winds gusting to around 50 to 60 right now. That's kind of an estimate because there's no equipment left in Lake Charles either. That's broken. The radar there broke about 2 o'clock in the morning. So, you know, when you get this kind of thing coming on shore, you're going to get damage, and you even get damage to government equipment, and you get damage to the weather service equipment. So we're kind of in the dark there at times, and we have been for a while. Lumberton right there getting part of the eye wall, although it's now really breaking itself up. Miles in that Lumberton storm at this point. Beaumont getting out of the storm. Anderson Cooper will be coming out of his bunker pretty soon, we hope. And that whole storm has passed on by Lake Charles. And really, now we'll slide you over to New Orleans. There have been showers here in New Orleans, and some of them have been spinning. Those spinning storms have had tornado warnings on them for a lot of the night. There must have been 25 tornado warnings since midnight.
Port Arthur in Texas, Chad's what we're looking at. Lake Charles in Louisiana, another focus as well. We're going to check in with our reporters, as you know, Chad. They're everywhere there this morning. And again, we're looking for first light. Chad, before I let you go, can I ask you some questions? Sure. Why no break? You know, often you talk about the storm rolls through and then there's sort of a break and all the people who are out there kind of get to rest for a moment. We didn't really see that in this storm. Why not?
No, I think it was because it was actually dying in intensity. The storm was almost getting smaller as it was getting into colder water, and so those breaks that it had went away. Plus, it was over the warm Gulf of Mexico for so long, it didn't gulp in that dry air like we see it has one of those big breaks now on the south side. When you get those little bands that come through, there's little areas of dry air that will sneak into the storm, and the storm looks more like a saw blade for a buzz saw, and you get one finger and then another finger and another finger. This thing was just a solid round mass, and that mass was full of rain, and it just moved right on shore.
Now, when it moves on, it slows a lot and it gets weaker. Why isn't it just move through? I mean, why is there a potential for this storm to sit there? Because the implications of doing that, of course, are huge, not only for these towns that have already been affected, and we don't really know just how badly yet, but also for New Orleans, where they're really concerned about the storm surge and then additional rainfall.
Well, they had 6 foot of storm surge in New Orleans because the wind had come from the east for so long. It pushed that water into Lake Bourne, which is that little lake there, and then into Lake Pontchartrain, and filled up the entire east side of New Orleans. The levees went up. A couple of those levees couldn't handle that extra pressure and broke yesterday. That was the breaking news of yesterday. Why does it stop? Because there's a kidney-shaped high pressure to the north of it. There's a lobe of high pressure here. The top of the high pressure is up into Arkansas, and then another lobe that comes down like this. It's almost like a pillow, and this thing can't go any farther than that pillow. It's going to hit that high pressure, stop, and some models actually have it doubling back on itself, coming back through Houston, one having it coming back through New Orleans and then push down south and back into the Gulf of Mexico. Pictures out of Lake Charles now from just a new video out of that area. Not really seeing too much. Obviously, a lot of the power is out. The lights are out in that area. And if you had the wind gusts to around 115, and we think that happened in Lake Charles, we know from Rick Sanchez a little bit earlier that there was structural damage in downtown.
Yeah, certainly structural damage. Lots of debris has been reported so far, and a lot of trees down as well. So again, we'll get full reports on exactly how bad it is or where the storm hit. Chad, thanks a lot. We'll check in with you again. We want to check in with Anderson Cooper. He is in Beaumont, Texas, about 35 miles from the coast, and Anderson is pretty much in the heart of that storm. He filed this report just a few moments ago.
The winds are just constant now. It is just whipping. It is like thousands of needles just pricking you as you're trying to stand out here. I'm just going to try to get over there because there's you can't even look into it. You cannot look to where the wind is pointing because it's just too extreme. But the few times you can glance, it is literally just a white wall in front of you. You have no sense of how far it goes. And as you walk out, the winds just pick up. I'm going to basically stay behind this, but you really get a sense of how fast the winds are moving. It is this solid mass. This must be the height of the storm for us. I couldn't hear what Chad Myers was saying earlier, nor could I hear what Gary Tuckman was saying. He's elsewhere in Beaumont. But right here on the Neches River, this for us is probably as bad as it has been. And I just hope, just seeing the storm as powerful as it is right now, I fear for anyone who may still be out on that roadway who is just in their car. I can't even imagine being in a car stuck on the side of the road in conditions like this. This is probably our last broadcast because I think we're going to just now just go inside where it's safe. But I'm glad we're able to at least get on the air to show you what we think is for us the height of the storm. I don't think we've ever been able to broadcast in these kind of conditions. So I just want to thank all the technicians here. I don't know how they did it, but they got us up. And hopefully when we see you next, the storm will have died down.
In fact, Anderson Cooper went in and got some shelter just moments after he filed that report for us. We're going to check in with him a little bit later this morning. You'll recall that Galveston, Texas was held up really as a model of good evacuating and good evacuation plans. David Mattingly is in Galveston this morning. Let's take a look at how they did when the storm passed through. David, good morning.
Good morning. About 2 hours ago, we were just absolutely getting soaked out here, but now the rain is pretty much dried up. We've got a good, steady breeze blowing right now, not anything near hurricane force winds right now, though. For the last hour, we took a little bit of a drive around town just to see what has happened here and what has not happened here. Remember, early on, Galveston was pointed out as possibly one of the ground zeros of this storm. They were so worried they were going to have catastrophic damage that they took a lot of effort to evacuate their population here, 90% of the people heeding the evacuation warnings and going off to the mainland. Well, now the island is pretty much deserted except for a couple of thousand people who stayed behind. Those who stayed behind didn't see that much of a storm because of the way it tracked off to the north of us here. We did not nearly get the severe winds and severe rain and flooding that they thought they might get earlier in the week. What we did see, we saw some down traffic signs, we saw some down power lines, we saw some minor flooding, but nothing to the point where any roads were impassable. Also in town, there were still some small pockets, areas where the lights were still on, so the electricity wasn't out over the entire island. It's out in the area where we are and over most of the areas, but as you go into town, there are still some areas where the lights are still burning brightly. Looks like nothing has happened at all except maybe a summer storm going through. There are a lot of very old trees here. A lot of the large limbs, the large trees are still intact. There are some small limbs on the ground on the streets that we were driving through. One of the biggest sources of property damage actually came from a fire last night. Firemen had to rush from here at this site where they've hunkered down for the storm. They had to run over to the Civic Center where they have parked their equipment for its protection during the storm. They went to fight the fire. There were 3 buildings involved, well involved at the time that they got there. The winds at the time were acting just like a blast furnace, just feeding that flame. They were coming out the tops of the buildings. They were well involved. The best they could do was make sure that those fires did not spread to the buildings around them, and that's what they were able to do. So the firemen going out in this storm to take care of that fire and preventing further property damage. So as of right now, this island, which was preparing for the worst just a couple of days ago, did not come close to seeing the worst of this storm. Soledad?
Showing pictures, David, while you've been talking of that fire and the firefighters really having to do incredible amounts of work in the heavy winds, hauling their gear around, and obviously not great conditions for them. And you can see the fire blazing out of control. I want to ask you about that flood wall. Do you remember you did that walk for us and showed us really how that wall was going to protect at least parts of Galveston? They were hoping. You say they dodged a bullet. How did that flood wall hold up?
Well, that flood wall is 17 feet high. As of late yesterday, the last forecast they got before this storm came in was that they were only going to see a flood surge, a storm surge, and we're getting some of those gusts of wind coming back in now. They were only going to see a storm surge of about 7 feet above normal, something well below what that flood wall would be able to handle. We actually expected to see some waves crashing up against that wall and doing some spectacular geysers up the side, but nothing at all like that happened. It was because of all of this wind, it was actually flattening the water out, so there wasn't really much wave action at all. So the waves crashing over the tops of the seawall in dramatic fashion didn't happen at all with this storm. There was some flooding, there's some minor flooding in the areas that aren't protected by the seawall, and that flooding was actually beginning well before darkness fell here. There was some minor flooding reported at the west end of the island. There's been some minor flooding reported all around the island in different areas. But again, when you look at New Orleans, that set the standard for severe flooding when it comes to storms like this. Nothing at all nothing here even approaches what we saw there. So here, very minor flooding. And as soon as that tidal surge goes out and back to sea, it'll probably take all that water with it.
Yeah, it certainly is all relative. David Mattingly for us. David, thanks. We'll check back in with you again. As the light comes up, it'll be interesting to see really just how much damage has been done and how many people are without power this morning. Thanks, David. Let's get right to Miles O'Brien. Miles is reporting for us this morning from Lumberton, Texas, and we have seen pictures of Miles where he is essentially being blown across the parking lot or wherever he is, coming in occasionally to get a little bit of shelter. He joins us by phone, and they're having some, as you can imagine, some technical difficulties because the wind is really, really strong. We'll see if we have our connection with Miles. Miles, can you hear me? All right, well, it's a satellite phone. We're having a little bit of difficulty. You're going to have to bear with us as this storm is still quite strong, and it's going to impact our technical issues today. Let's get right to Ted Rowlands. He's in New Orleans this morning, and of course, all eyes on New Orleans, even as this storm was not really headed directly for New Orleans because of the concerns about flooding. We saw it flooding on Friday, yesterday afternoon already. How's it doing today, Ted?
Well, so far so good, Soledad. People keeping their fingers crossed throughout the night, hoping that the levee would holding the water in Lake Pontchartrain at bay. As you mentioned, yesterday things did not go so well, and there was some real concern. Yesterday morning, we had a levee break which flooded the 9th Ward, the lower 9th Ward. Again, this was an area that was devastated after Katrina, and it is still underwater now. They were not able to go in and fix that break in the levee because of the weather conditions yesterday. The winds were too high, and it was raining. That said, overnight, there was some real concern that more levees would break. We have not heard of any problems overnight. We did not get much rain. The winds were manageable as well here, so some very good news for a city that could use it, and the hope is that they can get in there, fix the other levee, and start again trying to pump this city dry and start rebuilding this city that is just devastated.
Ted, you know, we're showing some pictures of, in fact, that breach yesterday, and you can see the water sort of flooding right over the levee. It was a big concern. The mayor said that, you know, just another nightmare on its way. Psychologically, how is the city doing? I mean, you know, a 1-2 punch really. And how many people are actually still in New Orleans?
Well, not many, and that's the saving grace here. Of course, the stakes are much lower this time around because the city is essentially evacuated and because there was so much property damage the first time around. There's really not much you can do to some of this property, but you mentioned the psychological damage. One guy walked by us today and said, my house flooded twice in the 9th Ward. You could just imagine what people are going through and the thought of having to start over with the pumping process and the cleanup process in some of the areas where they had made so much headway was really depressing, and the mayor alluded to the fact that this was their worst nightmare. Overnight, though, I think things have really cleared up in terms of the dismal outlook, and if things can stay as they are now, they'll have an opportunity to go fix that levee and start pumping the 9th Ward and St. Bernard's Parish, which also receives some water, and get back to the daunting task of rebuilding the city.
I want to ask you about the satellite. You know, as you talk, we can see the path of Rita right now. We're showing it live, and we'll continue to. But, you know, about an hour ago, it really looked as if, because the storm is so big, that New Orleans was just getting pummeled by the bands. What was it like for you there an hour ago?
Well, it wasn't bad. We got some rain, and we've had some wind, and it's raining now. And about 10 minutes ago was the worst we had. And we didn't know what to expect, and we quite frankly expected a lot more rain, and we may get more, depending on what the remnants of Rita and where it moves and where it stalls out. But at this point, the rain, the 3 to 5 inches of rain from a tropical storm that was forecasted for New Orleans, possibly coming overnight, just didn't come. It didn't materialize, which is great news and is exactly what the city needs. Now they need some time to get in there and repair that breach. Whether they'll be able to do it today or at what point today, who knows, because the wind is pretty strong still here this morning, and it'll probably be a little bit before they can get there and repair the damage.
Get some good news out of that. All right. Ted Rowland's reporting for us. Ted, thanks. Sunlight comes up. We'll take a look at exactly how bad it is in New Orleans as well this morning. We want to check in with Rob Howell. He is back on the ground. He was up in the hurricane chase plane not too long ago. He's a CNN producer, and he is in Marietta, Georgia this morning. Rob, good morning to you. You're back on land now. What were you looking at? What did you see, and how did it look?
Well, so Dad, we passed through the eye wall about 3 times, and we were able to take a reading each time. Obviously, you saw as the storm approached land, it began to weaken. While it sped up, it began to weaken. We drove through it with a very tight eye wall, so that on board the plane here, we were able to, there was turbulence, but we were able to hold on to our seats. The interesting thing is I'm flying with the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance here. They're usually at a Keesler Air Force Base. They've obviously been moved to Dobbins Air Force Base. They've never had a rest ever since Katrina hit. They were moved right on to following Rita, and a lot of these folks have lost a lot of their own homes and things back in Mississippi. But there's some interesting thing that just happened. We were the last flight to pass through the eye wall before it took land, and there was a special request made from President Bush. He personally wanted to have the last reading from the eye wall, the intensity of the storm, basically, as it made land. So the 53rd Weather Reconnaissance, made another pass so that they could get a reading 3 miles off land and 3 miles on land and report back the exact reading of what the storm was doing as it hit land. So that.
All right, Rob Howell for us. We're going to check in with you again as you get some more of that information for us. Obviously, the president making a request to see exactly with what strength that hurricane has now hit land. Hurricane Rita, as we mentioned, made landfall just about 3 hours ago. Is the storm losing strength now? It's time to check in with the National Hurricane Center in Miami. Max Mayfield's there for us. Hey, Max, good morning. It's nice to see you. Bring us up to speed on Rita. What's the strength now? Where is it right now?
Well, it did make landfall as a Category 3 hurricane, and the Air Force reserves that you were talking about there did a fantastic job for us all through the night, as they always do. The center of the hurricane right now is located right here, just a little bit to the northeast of Beaumont, Texas. Still moving towards the northwest. It is definitely weakening now, and is probably down close to a Category 2 hurricane. But we don't want to let people think this is the end of it here. The storm surge is still going to be coming on shore here as long as we have the strong southerly flow here on the east side of the eye. That's probably going to stay up very high most of the day. The winds will come down, but we'll still have additional power outages as it moves inland, and we'll likely have 10 to 15 inches rain here over the next day or two. And then at the longer time periods, we've got to worry about it slowing down, and in 4 to 5 days' time, it'll be somewhere up here in northeastern Texas, southwestern Arkansas. And if it does stall up there, we could have some very high rainfall amounts, and people need to be very careful because we often have loss of life well after landfall from people driving their cars through flooded out roadways from the heavy rains.
So you're thinking that 4 or 5 days, this storm's going to make pretty minimal progress up into Texas.
Right. The wind's not going to be a problem at all here. By tomorrow afternoon, it'll probably be down to a tropical depression, but the rains could still be with us here for several more days.
All right, Max Mayfield, he is at the National Hurricane Center. Thanks for talking to us, Max. We certainly appreciate it. We want to get to Sanjay Gupta in St. Charles, Louisiana. Lake Charles, Louisiana, several critically ill patients who couldn't be evacuated are being cared for at Christus Hospital. Senior medical correspondent Dr. Sanjay Gupta is joining us by phone. Sanjay, first, how did the medical center survive the storm, and what kind of shape is it in?
It looks like it's done pretty well overnight, so that there were some reports originally from the police department that there may have been some damage to the building. We've been just checking with the administration, scouring the building themselves. They say the roof is still intact. That was a concern that maybe some of that had been lost and some windows blown out. It was interesting, just to sort of be inside the building, it just all of a sudden sounded like a big freight train was going right by outside, and the wind was just clawing at the windows, trying to get in. And it, just sort of seemed like it was bursting at the seams. But for the most part, it seems like everything is intact. I think, like a lot of other people, have just lost all of our capabilities in terms of our satellite and all that. Just too much wind last night. But I was just listening to your previous guest. Right now over here, this seems like there's still a lot more wind than there is rain. For the most part, the patients did well overnight. They have been on emergency generator power now. Since yesterday, late afternoon, that emergency generator power has maintained. There's been relatively no flooding in the hospital itself, and the patients are still being well cared for, so that.
Sanjay, how many doctors and nurses have stayed behind, and how many patients are actually so ill that they cannot be moved and are also staying behind?
Well, there was less than half a dozen patients before, sort of midday yesterday, and then there were a couple of patients who came in with injuries. Interesting story, just to give you a sense of what a hospital has to do in a hurricane. A gentleman who had been boarding up his windows fell and severely fractured his leg and needed an operation. Unfortunately, no orthopedic surgeon in the hospital. There are 50 staff members, but one of them is not an orthopedic surgeon, so actually the neurosurgeon, the brain surgeon on duty, basically had to do the operation on this gentleman's leg, and that's just the reality of what happens to a hospital in a hurricane. But about 50 staff members, doctors, nurses, techs, and 4 chaplains as well at this Christus Hospital here in Lake Charles, Soledad.
What's the mood like, Sanjay? I recall, of course, our conversations when you were at Charity Hospital right in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, and what a different scene it sounds like.
Yeah, a huge difference between here and there. Over there was flooding. There was no power. There was no water. There was really nothing. They were running low on food supplies as well. They had patients that they were bagging for days on end because they required breathing machines, and there was no power to be able to fuel those breathing machines. Here, it's a different sort of mood. The generators have worked. There doesn't appear to be significant flooding. The doctors and staff, for the most part, have remained dry. Some have had to go from inside to outside a few times for separate things, but for the most part, the mood is they're still weathering it. I think it was pretty frightening last night, to be sure. It was, again, that wind and that freight train sort of feeling almost going by outside and just being relentless for just so long here. It just was unbelievable. It's still going on now. Is a roof about to fly off or windows about to bust? Hasn't happened as of yet, so that.
Gosh, well, we certainly hope it's not going to happen. You talked about the hospital going into generator power yesterday afternoon, Sanjay. Was that sort of just preemptive, or was it so bad by early afternoon that the hospital had to turn on the generator power because you lost actual power?
It was so bad by early afternoon that the hospital just did it automatically. It's a switch that actually triggers when the power is lost within a few seconds those emergency generators kick in. So all that sort of during early afternoon and mid-afternoon, you could just hear all the transformers just going. It'd be these loud booms, and that was explained to me. It wasn't a noise that I'd really heard before. It almost sounded like a gunshot, but what it was these transformers going, being either pulled out of the ground or lines just breaking, essentially power being lost. And I guess by sort of late afternoon, enough of those transformers had gone, enough power was lost that the hospital had to automatically, as it does, switch over to emergency generator power. Now, those generators are actually fueled by diesel fuel, and which was interesting to me because here in this hospital you have lots of diesel fuel to be able to maintain these generators for several days. You also have a lot of compressed oxygen. That's also a potentially combustible thing. And if there is a sort of Achilles heel and all that, that is probably it, the concern about fires or explosions from that compressed oxygen, Soledad.
Yeah, I can imagine that would certainly complicate things not only for the patients and the doctors, but any rescuers who had to kind of work in those conditions too. Sanjay, thanks. We'll be interested to see when first light comes up just how bad it is right outside the hospital where you are. Sanjay Gupta joining us this morning, and he is reporting from Lake Charles in Louisiana. Miles O'Brien, speaking of rescue efforts, Miles O'Brien, who's in Lumberton, Texas, has been dealing with high winds and actually having lots of technical problems because it's really affecting our communications abilities. But earlier this morning, he spoke to some rescuers who were not only hunkered down, but then on the job again as the storm came right through Lumberton. Let's listen to his interview.
There was a tree down on a house, family of 5 inside. They got a call here, and they went out in the midst of this, into the teeth of this gale, to literally cut them out. And it was quite a scene. I'm going to begin with the police chief, Norman Reynolds. First of all, you got the call from them. Big tree down in the house. What did you do at that point?
Well, we got our maintenance crew and 2 patrolmen, and the mayor and I went down the road. It's north of town, about 3 miles down that road, to try to get the family of 6 out of the house. Had 5 trees that had to be cut up. It had fallen over the road as we went in.
So just 5 trees just to get there?
Yes.
And once you got there and saw the house, was it in pretty bad shape?
One end of it was crushed by a large tree.
So the family, I guess, was pretty lucky to dodge that one.
Very lucky and very shook up.
Mayor Don Surratt, when you drove through your town, try to describe what it was like tonight.
Well, it's just an eerie feeling. Everybody, it's just all black, and wind is blowing, and things are flying around all in the area.
It must have been hard just to even see the road.
It was hard to see the road. It looked like it was the trees and everything, and the little limbs that were just growing out of the road. It was.
And at one point, you even saw a kind of a scared deer.
Yes, sir. We saw a scared little doe deer running alongside the road.
Were you worried about your personal safety at all?
Oh yeah, you have to be concerned about your own self also. I mean, if you get hurt out there, you can't help anybody else in the process. And you're out there cutting them trees out of the middle of the road, and the other trees are leaning over. It's pretty eerie.
Chief, you told me that there was a tree that actually fell down right in front of you.
Yes, as we approached it, it fell out in front of us.
And at this point, what goes through your mind?
I'm glad I hadn't gotten quite that far.
Tell me, when you finally got to the family, what did they tell you about their ordeal?
They just didn't think it was going to get this bad. Realized they should have left a few earlier, and we're very, very grateful.
Now, you brought the family. You have an emergency shelter and a nursing home, which is just a couple of buildings down from here. I know they're safe and sound there. Maybe they'll talk to us in a little while. I imagine they're fairly shaken up by this ordeal.
Yes, they are. It was 2 grandparents, a mother, and 3 children.
And, we don't want to, at this point, there's not much people can do, but this brings up the point of why it is dangerous to try to ride these things out.
Very, very true.
You told me before that you had about a 90% compliance rate on evacuations. That still means you're getting some calls. There's 10% of your population is out there. What kinds of calls are you getting?
We're mostly getting calls of trees down. We've had to go out earlier and cut trees off the main highway. Alarm calls. We've had to go and bring 2 or 3 more people into the shelter. Most of our calls are just calls that don't involve dangers to persons, just property.
So you got about 10 people in that shelter now?
No, sir. I think we got 8.
8 people. Mayor, we're about 40, 50 feet above sea level here. There wasn't concern about storm surge, but with this rain coming in, A lot of flooding that I'm seeing right here. Did you see a lot of evidence of that as you drove around?
No, I didn't see a lot of evidence of flooding, but we have some low areas in the city, so we are expecting some.
Is this area pretty high where we stand right now?
It is pretty high, it sure is.
Did you get a chance? I know that some of the emergency and police personnel from the communities of Port Arthur, further south, down by the coast, are staged here. Did you get a chance to see them and see how they're doing over there at the high school?
I haven't seen them since about 7 this afternoon.
What, in general, can you remember a storm like this one that has barreled through this area? I mean, Carla in 61, maybe?
Yes, I remember it. It was a devastation everywhere with it.
Are you, at this point, based on the damage you've seen, is this city going to take a big hit?
Oh, yes, I think we will take a big hit, but we won't know till we can see. We get some daylight so we can move around and the weather improves where we can get out.
And Chief, at this point, what kinds of calls will you respond to?
Until the wind subsides, we'll only respond to calls involving dangers to persons. After that, we'll get out and see what we have in the morning as far as property damage.
Now, you just got a call from the sheriff's office saying, get ready, right?
And in the next 10 minutes, the winds at 110 miles an hour should be here.
I'm amazed that the cell phones are still working in spite of everything else. No power, no nothing. You got to be concerned about your personal property, too. Officer Roach, your family is safe, I know, but are you concerned?
Yes, sir. My family's safe, and you know, the majority of us police officers here in Lumberton live in Lumberton. So, yes, it's hard not to sit here and want to go over to your house and check on your own stuff. So, yeah, it's hard.
All right, guys.
David, how about introducing some of the other guys here? This is Officer Chad Wilson. This is Brian Irwin. He is the building maintenance. And we got Ernie Mason.
All right, the entire team in Lumberton. Already one rescue on. Let's hope you don't have to get out there again tonight, because it's not getting any better here in Lumberton.
That was Miles reporting from Lumberton, Texas a little while back, talking about the rescue efforts there. And he's right, it wasn't getting any better in Lumberton. And in fact, the wind speed's so high, 58 miles an hour reported now in Beaumont, Texas, not too far where Miles is, that in fact they're having some huge problems, technical problems with communication. It looks as if we have established contact with Miles again. Let's check in with him and see if we can actually keep this connection. Hey, Miles, how's it going?
The one thing is that it's a wild ride here right now. I feel like I'm inside a car right now. One of our live position. I feel like I'm inside a car wash. It's you can play the seat of water of the car is hot and cold. There's quite a bit of flooding in the parking lot right now.
Hey, Miles, I'm going to stop you there, and we're going to try to reestablish this connection because I know you're on a sat phone, and it sounds really muffled, and we're having a really hard time hearing you. So let's see if we can clear that up while we talk a little bit about the status of Hurricane Rita right now. We'll bring in Chad Meyer, see if we can fix our connection with Miles. No surprise, really, Chad, considering the wind speeds right now, even though they've died down a lot since landfall, just how hard it is for some of our reporters to actually make connections and get through.
He's going to be able to take that microphone and shake it from top to bottom to get all that water out. That's exactly what it sounded like it was just full of rainwater. This has been a very wet storm so far. Some spots around Lake Charles, 10 inches of rain. Doppler estimated. Now, I'm not sure how well the Doppler did overnight because a lot of this rain was going sideways. But Beaumont to Lumberton right about there. Here is your heavy band here. This is still the remnants of what was the northern part of the eye wall. Not really an eye wall anymore. It is not really an eye either. It's really getting torn up now. As it hits land, that always happens. The water is the source of its energy. When you lose the water, you lose the energy, you lose the hurricane. Here's New Orleans all the way down through Belle Chase, and this entire area here is filled with these little storms. They're called mini supercells. They're different than the supercells we get in the Midwest, but they're still spinning. There must be a dozen counties and parishes under tornado watches and tornado warnings right now with all of this spinning all the way up through Mississippi and even, for that matter, even as far east possibly as Alabama and as far north as Arkansas later today when the sun comes out. So it's going to be a busy day one way or the other.
About that, Chad, and I certainly think as we get to see the damage, because of course in some places it's still way too dark to really understand, what's gone wrong and how bad it is. I mean, we won't be able to eyeball it till the sun comes up. But let's show some pictures if we can. You're looking at now pictures from Lumberton, Texas. This is where Miles' location is. And boy, Chad, we saw him in the heart of this storm just getting blown around to the point where he had to duck low just so he could stay, basically on his feet.
We can interpolate from one spot to another with the wind speeds on our machine here. And we kind of interpolated that to about an 85-mile-per-hour gust, where Beaumont, where Anderson Cooper was, actually was 104. So it really does, that's a matter of where you are and where you live. It's also really a matter of how much you're getting protected by a building. Right. Because you can actually get a wind tunnel effect going and be more than 104. You know, a 20-mile-an-hour wind in Manhattan, you get down there on Fifth Ave, it can be a 40-mile-an-hour wind gust in a wind tunnel, and you can't even walk up the street. Same kind of thing. You have to really protect yourself where you are. We protected our equipment, we protected our people, and so far, so good tonight.
Speaking of walking up the street, we're showing pictures from Beaumont, Texas, sort of driving down the street. Again, you know, you really can't get a good sense of just how much debris is about. You can only get a little bit because, of course, you can't really see it too clearly. But I think as the sun comes up, we're going to get a good sense of the damage. Clearly, power lost, and I don't think that's any surprise to anybody. This is Kemah, Texas, which is between Houston and Galveston, Chad. And again, it looks kind of the same. How high did the winds get here, and how much damage do you think they're going to wake up to today?
Well, the winds got to about 60 here. Now, the only problem is those winds were coming from the north to the south. And a lot of the oil refineries are actually on the west side of Galveston Bay. And as that wind was pushing that water into those refineries, there may have been some overwash into those refineries. We don't know. Obviously, we won't know until sun comes up. The same story for the northern part of Galveston. For, I don't know, 5 days we talked about this 17-foot wall in Galveston. Well, that didn't do any good because the waves weren't coming from that direction. They were coming from the bay side where there isn't a wall. There's not much tropical stuff going on there right now. The winds are down to about 30 miles per hour with gusts to around 40. But still, Houston seeing some wind gusts to 54 miles per hour right now.
Galveston, Texas. We got some pictures there since you've been talking about it. Let's show it. And I was talking to David Mattingly not long before about that wall, and he said, just as you said, the storm surge really wasn't the problem. They were really concerned that they would be seeing some of that. But we're looking at damage. You could see clearly some structural damage to some of the buildings and businesses there.
Well, you know what? Even if this was a wave or just wind, we don't know yet because I don't know how this damage actually occurred. But a wave, even a 4-foot, 5-foot wave, will have so much more power and devastating effect to a building than maybe even a 90-mile-per-hour wind gust. So, I mean, there could have been some overwash. This could have been on the bay side. I don't know. But right here, this looks like probably just structural damage from some type of failure on the facade of that building. So many brick buildings look like they look like they're made of brick, but it's just a little one layer of brick stuck to a wood frame building, and that looks like that came off of that face front there.
So this storm's going to stick around, and that's a real concern because, as you have said a zillion times in past hurricanes, it's after the storm passes through often where most of the lives are lost.
Yeah, it's called freshwater flooding, Soledad. Saltwater flooding is storm surge because the salt water from the Gulf or the ocean or whatever gets pushed up onto the land. And we saw that Bay St. Louis, Waveland, past Christiane, all the way over to Biloxi and Gulfport. That's saltwater flooding. Freshwater flooding is when it's raining. This storm is going to stop over Texarkana, and it's going to rain for days. It may even drift as far south as New Orleans and rain a lot there. They don't need that. They had the levee breaks yesterday because of some wind pushing water back into New Orleans. Some of the numbers up about 6 feet, a storm surge, although not the storm surge you think of. New Orleans is just kind of sticking out there in the Gulf of Mexico, and the water pushed itself up there and caused all that flooding that we saw in those levees.
All right, Chad, we're going to check back in with you again. I'm really interested to see, outside of the fact that clearly a lot of people have lost power in a lot of places, just what is the damage they're waking up to today. We'll get a look as soon as we get some pictures from early light. Chad, thanks. Let's check in with Randy Kay. She's in Baytown in Texas. Lots of refineries there. It's a big concern, not only for the local economy, but the nation's economy as a whole. Randy joins us by phone. Hey, Randy, good morning.
Hi, Soledad. Good morning to you. We've actually moved inside because the winds right now are just too dangerously high to put our satellite dish up. So we hope to get a live picture up for you just a little bit later. But right now I can tell you I just hung up the phone with Ed Hawthorne, and he works with a group here in town called SEMA. And they pretty much patrol the ship channel, which is lined by about 200 chemical plants and refineries. And he has been set up in a building that can withstand a Category 5 hurricane throughout the night. And we've been checking with him every hour, and he said that the industrial sector is all quiet, were his words. He is pleasantly surprised. They haven't received any reports of any chemical leaks or any accidents at any of the refineries or oil plants. And here in Baytown, they have the largest refinery in the United States, the ExxonMobil refinery. So that is very good news. Of course, as you said, you're anxious to see what happens at daylight and what we can actually see. They, too, are anxious to get over to these refineries and do a full assessment. It only took them about 24 hours to shut down. We were there just yesterday at one of the Shell plants. But it could take them, in a case like this, anywhere from 5 to 7 days to actually start back up. So they do expect to be down for some time. But hopefully, if it's not too severe, any of the damage that they may find, they should be able to get up and running fairly quickly instead of any long period of time. So that is the good news here in Baytown right now, Soledad. We're just seeing a lot of damage in terms of power lines and power outages, a lot of transformers exploding, and that is what we're seeing here. But other than that, we seem to be in pretty good shape, except for some very, very dangerously high winds.
Randy, let me ask you a quick question. You talked about the skeleton staff that's really remaining on these refineries so that they can bring them down and then hopefully, if there's not too much damage, bring them right back online as quickly as possible. How many folks are there? I mean, how many people does it take to try to keep an eye on the refineries as this storm approaches?
Well, I can certainly speak to the Shell refinery that we visited, which is in Deer Park, just the next town over from Baytown. They have 1,700 employees there, and they were leaving about 20 behind to ride out the storm there in case of an issue. They left some security folks there and some environmental experts in case that there is any type of chemical release. So they will all be back as soon as they can. I think the initial team will go in and do the early assessment at daylight after the storm passes. But there's also the question of how long it will take to get oil to come in down the actual ship channel, how much damage there might be to the pipelines buried beneath the channel. There's a web of pipelines there. So it really depends on if they'll even get oil to refine that oil and if they'll even get oil to be able to run. The Shell plant, I know, can only go about 5 days before it needs oil again just to run. So it's going to be interesting to see if there is any damage at any of these chemical plants.
Yeah, and as you said, everybody's interested with First Light to get out there because the assessment is really the critical part now that the storm has hit and is passing through. Randy Kay in Baytown for us this morning. Randy, thanks. She was joining us by phone. The fire in Pasadena, Texas. It's in a shopping mall, apparently. There were reports that this fire may not be necessarily hurricane-related, still early in any investigation. But obviously, as you can see, and as we have heard from our reporters all morning, any kind of rescue efforts in the heart of a storm are going to be compromised and certainly complicated when there are high winds and rain. And even, no rescuers really want to be out on the streets when no one should